keep
Hello.
going on. We were talking off the record about, I guess, masks people wear and how they kind of navigate their social environment. But we were also talking specifically about fighters and how fighters, even though the purview is we are these like hyper eccentric, super confident, oh my God, nothing can touch me. We are some of the most insecure creatures that exist.
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
Well, in the far look of it, I think a lot of people who fight are battling something maybe even from childhood.
Like a trauma?
Yeah. I think a lot of people that come into the sport come from traumatic experiences. Maybe not even realizing it. And maybe they never do. And then some maybe like their why changes because of that. You know how like, the inspirational videos you see of like finding your why to fight and everything. I think some people's why changes in the sport too when they find out maybe their why was battling like a trauma or something like that. But it amazes me in a gym how confrontation can be so weird between like these like tough people.
Alpha males.
Yeah.
And alpha females.
Yes.
No, I agree. I know from personal experience, I have no problem saying it, that like my outward exuberance, like I am confident, don't get me wrong. However, a lot of my confidence did stem as like this reaction or like a defense mechanism of like, I don't want this guy to think that I'm insecure because I am. I do have insecurities. I am worried about like, well, what if he knocks me out? Well, what if like just similar to everybody else, you know what I mean? But I want them to believe that there's not a doubt in my mind that I'm like a steel trap. So I would kind of be like a little bit more eccentric to kind of really bring it home. But yeah, I was the same way. Like, if someone was upset with me at the gym, I'd be like, oh man, what's going on? Or if there was a fight coming up and like the banter would go from talking about me to talking about other things, right? That was always one thing that I tried to like never cross. I know for a fact I never crossed, was because I feel like as a fighter, you can say whatever you want about another fighter. Like if you and I are fighting, fuck Kelly, this, that, or the other. But I'm not going to be like, and her husband, and her family.
Personal,
like they're not fighting me. Kelly is.
Yeah.
Like say whatever I want about you because at the end of the day, you get the opportunity to punch me in the face. And no one likes a bully. And now I'm talking ill about people that will never first of all, we're never even, signed up for this. Second of all, have nothing to do with this. I think fighting is really, I do agree with your trauma perspective though, because when you look at other sports, like, how many fighters, forego a career in golf to fight, forego a career in like F1 to fight. Usually fighting is the only option.
Yes.
It's an interesting paradigm.
The only option, or I guess their only mental fix to something potentially.
Do you think that's healthy or unhealthy?
Both. So personally, one of the reasons I even started getting into boxing was my first love. One of the reasons I got into it was I came from an abusive relationship. Yeah, most people don't know that. It's actually one of the reasons I had to leave my hometown. I grew up in Perryville, Missouri, started the fire service there, but dated a guy that had ended with a restraining order, and I had bruises around my neck where you could see like every finger. And
how young were you?
I was 18.
Oh my God, baby still.
Yeah. So.
How old was he?
28. I think.
Oh Jesus Christ!
I know.
Oh Jesus Christ!
I know. Like the bad boy phase.
Oh man, I'll tell you what.
I did that. Former Marine, like, he had his own problems, but I even got where I never drank and stuff with him because I knew he turned into a different person during that. So I finally got down to one night he was strangling me, and I just happened to know a buddy at this campground that came over and broke a Jack Daniels bottle over his head to knock him out. And that's the only reason he quit. And everybody else was actually so fucked up at the time that I dragged him to the car myself and got him in the back of the car and drove him to the hospital. And if he would wake up, I would get out of the car, lock all the doors, wait till he passed back out. Because he was losing enough blood. He wasn't going to stay alert for super long. Got him to the hospital myself and then had to file a restraining order and stuff.
So you saved his life after he attacked you.
Yes.
And then told him, you can't come near me.
Yeah, but then he kept stalking me. So, like, would wait outside my work and stuff like that. So
that's why the restraining order?
Restraining order was still in place. It didn't matter.
So then what happens then? Doesn't he go to prison?
No.
Then what's the point of a restraining order?
So it's really weird in small towns. Like, when your family has some leeway in a small town, there's just different rule sets.
I'm assuming his family had some leeway and some rule sets were omitted.
A little different.
Is that why you left Perryville and came to St. Louis, or?
That was a big factor, like a supportive factor.
Just wanted to take a second to pause the action and just tell you guys thank you so much for consuming our content. Easy Talk is a passion project. This podcast is just a bunch of like-minded people coming together to produce some cool stuff and talk to some cool people. One of the things I would very much appreciate is if you could possibly like the video or subscribe to the channel, just because it helps us in the algorithm and ultimately to grow, to get more exposure to everybody, including ourselves, and ultimately just make a better product. Take a second. I'd greatly appreciate it, and on with the show.
Obviously following my fire career, because there's nothing full-time down there. So if I wanted to do it full-time, I had to move up here, but getting out of town was safer. But introducing me to boxing was like to never feel like a victim again. Was a huge thing, because I didn't know what to do. Like, getting attacked, like, and you've never had any kind of self-defense, like, what do? You know? You're
feeble.
Right, exactly. So to feel that helpless was, like, one of the worst feelings in the world, and I told myself I would never, ever feel that again. So, like, I do think everybody that gets into this has kind of a weird driving factor, whether it's traumatic like that, or maybe they were bullied in school. Maybe they had parents that weren't supportive, or maybe they had parents that they could never be good enough for or something. There's always, you get into people's stories, I feel like there's always something that, like, was a little bit of a driving cause.
So one of the benefits of this podcast is I try to find, I'll tell you an example of what we're talking about right now was actually Steve Berger. The idea of Steve Berger's episode and, like, how I was going to navigate that conversation was, like, a certain way. And then when he started talking about his, like, mother and his father and, like, going in depth into his childhood, the script kind of went out the window. I was like, oh, well, fuck. Well, I can't just change the subject now. So, like, we kind of dug a little deeper into there. And I think that there is truth into what you're saying in the sense of, first, that fighters by nature of choosing this path may be a little bit troubled. Mm-hmm. But I also agree with that it can both be, like, a healthy and unhealthy fuel for them. So then you got into boxing because specifically, like, the catalyst for getting into boxing was this traumatic experience with your ex-boyfriend. What kept you there, though?
Guns and hoses.
Yeah?
Yeah. I didn't get to just do it then for, like, to feel safe myself, but, like, a benefit like that. Guns and Hoses raises as much money for first responders. I was getting into the field myself, and I got to meet some amazing people. Some people that I'm still, like, friends with, some best friends with. And then also introduced me into the field more. Like, it's weird. I mean, you know, the friendship you form punching each other in the face is, like, a different...
It's a bond.
Yeah. It's a very different friendship. Very few will ever understand. So those friendships being able to carry over into the fire service was, like, a huge thing. It's
very anti what I was taught as a kid. Like, I was always taught, like, don't hit your friends and all this other stuff. Now it's like, dude, my best friends hit me all the time.
Exactly. Like, I can't wait to go hit my best friend, you know.
Do you think it's a brothers in arms thing? Because I try to deduce why that bond happens. And the narrow view that I've kind of decided on is everybody is going through, like, this sucks. But everybody is going through this sucks at the same time. Yeah. So you start to develop, like, a respect for people. Like, yeah, you hit me and that sucked, but I'm still here. And then I hit you and that sucked, but you're still here. And now we have this common bond of, like, why are we still here? Like, it's like a mutual respect.
So what we call it in the fire service is trauma bonding.
Interesting.
Weird
Some
lead up to that,
psychologists right now, it's like, these guys need help.
Right. So a lot of people that get in the fire service, too, also usually have, like, weird...
Quirks?
Yes. So think about it. Like, you go into the gym. It's fun, but it also sucks, right? Because some nights you get your ass beat. Some nights you walk away and you feel, like, fuck, I'm not good enough for this, or what do I need to do, or I can't believe I've been putting all my time into this and I feel like I haven't gotten any better, and you beat yourself down.
Or everything goes right, and then you have like a 5-second accident, and then this got hurt,
Yes.
this broke, this tore.
Right.
And then you start thinking, oh my God, maybe this isn't for me.
Exactly. So it's kind of like a whirlwind with that, and then the weight cutting. I mean, weight cutting is kind of a trauma
That's
for your mind and your body.
That's the biggest hurdle why I won't fight. Whenever someone starts saying like, you're only 32, you can still do it. I go, dude, I'm never seeing 135 again. And I don't want to compete at 170 because I'm going to get fucking worked.
We'll get into that for females. That's a whole I'm
sure it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. But like, just think of the things we experience as fighters. It's trauma too. Like physically and mentally, right?
Is it trauma or is it just... Because don't you think like the word trauma might be a little bit overused? Am I incorrect, you think?
But we get head trauma.
Fair.
And then when you go into... I think it depends on your atmosphere too.
Agreed.
So if you're into a good gym environment where you feel like you're part of something and it's building you.
And they care and
maybe
you care.
Maybe not so much mentally traumatic, right? But if you're in a gym environment or you've had multiple gym environments where maybe you don't feel like you're part of it, you're striving for that constantly, or an outsider, or maybe you feel like not part of the team, or I mean, like there's a lot of stuff there. And every gym has its ups and downs, right? Like it's seasons, I guess you would say. I think, it can be kind of trauma to be striving to be part of something that maybe you don't, or striving to be something that you maybe potentially never will do, or basing your whole life on something that maybe won't work out. You don't know that.
What is the difference between like a negative reinforcement and a trauma to you? Like, what is that threshold between like, this is something that sucked and it happened to me, to this is now something that was traumatic? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
I think it's a hard line.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. And
do you think
I think it's different for everybody.
Do you think the word trauma is overused now? That's a good segue like question to set the basis, because I actually do. I agree with everything you've said up until this point in the sense of like fighting tends to attract traumatized people. Yeah. I agree, whether that trauma is mental, physical, what have you. But I also think that the word trauma, and I'm not trying to like belittle anybody's hurdles in life, but I also think that our generation was the generation that kind of lost a lot of that like suck it up pussy mentality. Like, okay, yeah life is hard, suck it up.
Absolutely. I think if it's somebody that came into the sport healthy and didn't have like that background, then it's not trauma bonding so much based on that. I think it's like you're feeding it. You know what I mean? Like, we all came into this fucked up kind of thing. We're going to do fucked up shit together. That's where I think the trauma bonding happens in the fight sport. And the health aspect is through the bond, through not necessarily feeling alone. Yes. I'm not alone. I'm not weird. I'm not different. Yes. Everybody else is just as fucked up as me. Yeah, there's exactly. Strength in numbers. I don't think just coming into the sport makes you being able to trauma bond. I think if you are somebody that comes from a traumatized background, they got into the sport because of it, the trauma bonding happens in the sport because of it. Do you think it's also maybe the martial art that they choose? Because I think from what I've been able to deduce, that there is a fundamental difference, at least mentally, not necessarily physically, because people are born with certain gifts, people have certain disciplines, like they'll be attracted to certain things based on however God made them. But I notice a difference between like someone who will choose boxing versus someone who chooses kickboxing, or someone who chooses jiu-jitsu or wrestling, and then someone who chooses like MMA. They're similar. It's like a Venn diagram. Like they have some similarities, but boy, are they different. Right. No, I absolutely agree. And you can walk into a gym not knowing their main discipline and figure it out within moments, I think, just by the personalities you run into, right? Yeah. I do think that probably does come from their backgrounds or things they've experienced or what they're searching for sure. But there is definitely a weird personality thing there that I never even thought about. Yeah. Like the MMA people versus the kickboxing people. It's just something I've noticed. Jiu-jitsu people tend to be, this is going to sound so bad for me to say, jiu-jitsu people tend to be more articulate, more intelligent, and more thoughtful of their bodies and like their health. Yes. Versus MMA guys, in my experience, have been a lot more like, let's fucking go, boys. Right.
Like, we're gonna go to the dark. We're gonna go somewhere dark today, and hopefully we see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Which I have to say this. I think there's pros and cons to both. I don't think there's like a necessarily like. Let me put it this way: if I'm at a bar, I want the MMA guy. I want the MMA guy because if shit pops off, I know he's gonna be able to like navigate that situation accordingly. I don't necessarily want the blue belt who's only trained in a gi and maybe isn't necessarily comfortable with true confrontation.
Or getting hit.
Yeah. I hate to say it that way.
Is I feel like the MMA guy usually stays calmest the longest.
Because they understand conflict the best.
And they're like, I don't really want to get hit, but I guess if it comes down to it, like, they just don't get as amped up as quick, I don't feel like.
I agree. I was that way. I remember when I got into MMA, because I was like a, 5'7", 5'6", $150 kid. I was like 17, 18. I had small man syndrome. I was like, man, I really hope no one fucks with me because like I'm not really a big guy. Like I don't really want to get beat up. So when I got into MMA, I had like small man syndrome.
Did you get picked on?
No, I was
really,
dude. In high school, I was I was voted biggest flirt in high school.
That was like I never would have guessed that.
Yeah. Shout out Afton 2011. But like I was like a social butterfly. I was friends with everybody because I don't know. I was just be cool with me, I'll be cool with you kind of person, Yeah. But when you get out of high school, I don't know if this is necessarily a thing that women feel, but I know that I felt it. That like, because as a man, if I have a girlfriend or whatever and shit pops off, I have to be the person who like handles the situation. And I felt this insecurity because I knew I didn't have the physical presence nor the intellect in terms of like how to properly defend myself to handle the situation. So I was like, well, what do I do? Do I spend some hours in a range and get a gun and now I have to carry a gun everywhere I go? Like, it's a little extreme, don't you think? So like, yeah, there was like small man syndrome in the sense of I just had insecurity. I knew when I was 17 to 19 that if shit, even though I had wrestling, because I thought to myself like, okay, cool, I can take you down, then what?
Yeah.
Like, what if you get back up? Or what if you're fucking 300 pounds? Kyle Keeley. Good luck. What am I going to do? Single leg Kyle? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, there was this insecurity of, like, if shit pops off, I can't not only defend my partner or my friends, I can't defend myself. So when I first got into MMA or whatever, yeah, I had a lot of small man syndrome. It humbled me. I know that sounds crazy.
I was going to say it's an eye-opener, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every person that's sat in this chair, when we've talked about their first day, like, in the gym, from Rodrigo to Steve Berger to everybody, they've had this epiphanous, like, I am not the man I thought I was. Like, I had this idea of myself, and boy, was that ego crushed day one. And that's, I think, what made them fall in love with whatever martial art it was that they chose. For a lot of the people that I've had on, it seems to be jiu-jitsu. That could be boxing, that could be wrestling, what have you. All I know is I'm very glad you ever hear how people say, like, everyone should do, like, a service job? Like, be a waiter?
Absolutely.
Everyone should do, like, military service of some sort?
Yes.
I think that every person on this planet should do at least a year or two of martial arts. Not like a sex-based thing, like women and men. Everyone should do a year or two of, and choose whatever one you want. Boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, whatever it is that you want. It doesn't matter because the skill set isn't as important as the mental acuity you're developing about yourself, your surroundings.
Yes, exactly.
I have a daughter. Guess what she's going to be doing when she's like 5, 6 years old?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think every woman should. And no, not being like a sex thing, but I absolutely think, because it sucks even you saying you feel like you couldn't protect your partner. Yeah. I don't think you should have to feel like you have to protect your partner. First off, is a huge thing.
I disagree.
I think it's sweet. I think there is chivalry. I can't even say it.
Yeah, chivalry
isn't dead. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be dead. Like, you should step up when the moments are right. But also, I don't think a woman should be completely helpless.
I agree, actually. Okay.
So, like, thinking of your daughter going out into the world, do you think she just needs to have a big man boyfriend to protect her all the time? Or if somebody attacks her and she goes into a bathroom mid-run, do you want her to be
able to defend herself?
And I've also explained to women, too, when you learn any of these sports, it's not that you can potentially defend yourself. It's that you carry yourself differently.
I agree.
You don't look like a victim in public. You don't look like you're going to be easy target. Like, you do carry yourself differently in public whenever you know you can defend yourself.
Talk about the physical development.
Yeah.
Women that train look fundamentally different from women that don't.
Exactly.
just from their
And-
shoulders, their back, their
Yes.
thighs. It's like, oh, this woman, I don't know what she does. She does something.
Exactly. So I think, like, honestly, the guys that are going to do that don't want a hard. They don't want a hard target.
No.
They want an easy target. So if you look like you're going to be a hard time, they're not going to want to do that.
I'll go a step further. I genuinely believe this, and in my heart, I hope I'm not wrong. I think the type of man that looks for victims is not a man.
No.
So, like, what I mean by that is, like, you're not going to find a guy who's, like, at your local MMA gym who has been, let's say you go into a gym, and there's been a guy there who's been training, like, 4 years, and he's kind of been adopted by the group. And by being adopted by the group, you now have to set, like, a standard for yourself, both physically and mentally. Meaning, I have to train, I have to be in shape, I have to hang with these guys if I want to stay in the group. But more importantly, I now have to abide by, like, the social rules. And a lot of men that I know, they all have this in common of, like, the protecting, providing thing. Now, I agree with you wholeheartedly that women should not be, like, this victim mentality of, like, I need a man, duly noted. But I also think that there's a beauty to men wanting to protect.
Yes, I think that it's
Real
very
men,
nice.
real men, every group of real men I've been around all have that.
Yeah.
So to find a man who is, like, praying or looking for a victim, I guarantee you he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Because if he did, that mental block would have been fixed a long time ago.
Yeah.
He would have been the nail, and he would have known what that felt like. And he's like, man, I don't want to put anybody under that pressure.
Right.
That sounds awful.
Right.
I hope. I
You'd
could be
hope so.
completely wrong.
There's a lot of fucked up people in the world.
There is a lot of fucked up
Or
people.
I wouldn't have a job, honestly.
I do. This is the tough part about having you as a guest is, like, there's so many avenues I want to talk about. Your line of work is something I want to touch on,
Okay.
but let's also not do the topic of you getting into martial arts a disservice. So because of the traumatic experience that you had when you were younger, you decided, hey, I want to get into martial arts. The martial art that you chose was boxing.
Yes.
Fast forward 20 years, you're now a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Which is hilarious. 'Cause
Congratulations.
I hated jujitsu when I started. Thank
That was
you.
recent.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. Yeah, when I started with boxing, which most people don't know him, his name is Mike Stocker down in Eureka. Old school. He was a Green Beret. He's a firefighter as well. Like, like the old school guys you talk about that are so tough, that are like, he still does rounds on the bag to this day. He's well into his 70s. And he lost a leg due to a medical condition. And within weeks, we walk into the gym. We thought he was going to be out forever. He's fucking kicking the bag with it. Like,
With the prosthetic?
yes. Like, pivoting on
Fucking
it
savage.
and kicking with it. Like, he's that guy. So our boxing career starting out was very, like, you don't take water drinks. You spar everybody in here. And he was like, you're a fighter in here. You're not a female. If a guy walked in and didn't want to spar me, he's like, you got to leave. Like.
To the fighter that didn't
Yes.
want to spar, not
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Did you like that
Yeah.
as a woman?
There's times I'm like, there was times, honestly, we drove home and I don't remember the drive, so I'm pretty sure I had some pretty good concussions from down there. But it was like old school boxing mentality that, like, I needed it at that time. I needed it to, if I wouldn't have started out, I didn't need to be coddled. Like, coming into it for the reasons I was coming into it, I needed it to be that hard.
You wanted to jump into the deep end.
Yes, exactly. I needed it to hurt. I needed it to be that hard. I needed to have the
Why?
struggle.
Because of that?
I think really because I never thought I could be on any kind of platform in fighting, let alone, I really didn't think I could get that good at boxing even. I just didn't want to get strangled, So, like, when I trained with him for a while and then actually started cross-training places and realized how tough I was compared to other fighters coming out of that, I was like, I can handle anything. And that was one of my first, I guess, my qualities in myself was, like, I was fucking tough. I wasn't the most athletic and I wasn't the most technical, but I could take some shit. And that was one thing. Like, that was one of the first things he told me was, like, he pretty much threw me into sparring right away. And he's like, I can teach you some punches. I can teach you stuff for years. But if you can't take a punch, it doesn't matter. I can never fix that.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So it was very tough at first, and then getting into MMA, like, that was kind of accidental. We had another guy, Troy, that was bringing in wrestlers, and they were high school wrestlers. They were my size. He threw me in one day for shits and grins to just, they needed another body, and I actually did pretty good. And then he's like, why don't you consider MMA? And then got involved with Benny at 21st Century. Do you remember Rebecca?
Ruth?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was one of my big training partners down there.
And she was a good one, dude.
Dude, she's tough as shit.
She was a pioneer in Bellator females MMA.
Yes, and her hands were amazing. Like, her boxing was amazing.
She had a lot of knockouts.
She was somebody that made me thankful for having some groundwork, because that,
Whoa,
like,
I
get fucking tired of getting hit by her, right? Yeah, like, and I knew I had more ground than her, so when shit got bad, I'm like, all right, I guess I'll do this jiu-jitsu thing. But,
I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm not getting punched.
But I don't want to be here anymore. So, yeah. No,
well, she was also a little bit bigger. To give you some credit, she was a little older, a little bigger than you.
Yes.
So, and a little bit more experienced.
Yes.
Kelly, that's a tough fucking round.
And, like, fucking ruthless. Like,
Yeah.
she was one of
She
the
was a
girls.
killer.
There was no, if during sparring, if you looked like you were having a hard time, there was no, like, I'll let up. It's like, she's going to quit this round and come back for another, or she's not. So,
do you think that's good or bad?
I liked it. I needed it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm a bitch when it comes to sparring now. not for myself. Not for myself. I used to be, when I first started, I thought sparring was basically fighting. Like, when I first started,
I mean, that's what we were. We were fighting.
Yeah.
All of our sparring was fighting when I started.
The problem is, when you get a little better,
you don't need that.
Well, you're going to diminish your partners very quickly.
Yes.
If you're looking at sparring as a fight, because it's like, well, then no one's going to want to get in there with you unless it's like the top tier guys.
Right.
But then also, I would make the argument that the top tier guys and girls don't necessarily need to spar hard anymore.
Right.
So it's like sparring kind of changes. So when I first started what sparring was to now, dude, I'm a little bitch compared to then. I'll basically match the pace. I'm like, okay, you're 1 year in, okay, I'm just sitting there like trying to move around, just showing them a little head movement and stuff like that. And if the guy's really good, even if they're really good, I'm like, I will match the pace you are. And if you tell somebody that, at least in my personal experience, when you tell somebody, I'm going to match your pace, guess what they choose the pace to be?
Sometimes. I don't know. Some of those new guys, like, there's been times I'm like, all right, motherfucker. Like, I've told them, like, let's take it easy. But I know they're excited. Like,
when you say new guys, you mean like younger in the gym?
Like, younger, newer to fighting. To them, it's like survival, right? And they definitely
Or they want to win practice.
They don't want to get their, exactly.
They want to win practice.
They don't want to get their ass beat. They definitely don't want to get their ass beat by a girl, right? So there's a little bit different.
Do you think that's a factor?
Yeah, I do think sometimes. There's some guys who don't, like, there's some of my best friends that I made through fighting that were like, fuck, Kelly beat my ass, especially when I started. Like, they don't care. And those are the guys that progressed, like, probably the fastest, honestly. 'Cause I think females can be huge contributing factors. Like, we sparred. You knew I wasn't gonna probably knock you out, but I could give you some hard punches.
Dude, you hit hard.
So
I didn't want you to hit me.
But I could give you some hard punches that you wanted to stay away from. But you could also be comfortable enough to move and do stuff because you weren't on defense constantly, right?
No. I whenever I sparred you or Ashley, I always felt like I never, this is just me, anecdotal, I never saw it as different. I saw it as these girls are smaller than me. I was a 35er, you were a 115er. So my mentality was like, let's move and let's be fast. My mentality was never, they're a girl, so don't hit them hard. I hit you guys hard. I didn't give a fuck about hitting you guys hard. You want to know why? Because you guys hit me hard, and you didn't give a fuck about hitting me hard.
Right.
I gave you that respect.
I actually get mad if guys I can tell are going
Pull the
to
punches?
Yeah.
What do you mean by pulling the punches?
So it's like
Pulling, like they're going fast, but then they pull on the impact? Because I think that's
like
good
they act like
sparring.
they don't want to fucking hit me. Which is okay. With some people, I get, maybe if it's, like, I had a guy, I haven't sparred in quite a while, but one of the last times I did was in boxing, and it was a younger guy, and he was just getting into it. And, like,
You're talking 18, 19, 20?
Yes.
Okay, like a kid.
And I watched him with other people and could tell he was, like, very controlled. But he was going with a lot of bigger guys. And I was one of the smaller people in the gym that day. So I was going to move faster. My footwork's going to be different. Pressure's going to be different. He could probably pressure me instead of getting pressured all the time. So I decided to get in with him so he could just feel
The difference.
a little difference, right? He did not want to hit. Like, he'd cover, he would, like, just...
That's
and I'm
different.
like, listen, you have to fucking hit me. I'm not going to try to start hitting you hard to piss you off. Like, that would be old Kelly, where I would just try to land something to piss you off enough to hit me. I'm telling you to fucking punch me. He's like, I've never hit a girl. My dad told me never hit a girl.
Too.
And I'm like,
it.
I know, and he said
He's
that.
not wrong.
And
He's not wrong.
I'm like, listen, I respect that. Especially some of the shit that's happened in my past. I respect that a lot. But in here, it's a sport. And the girls that are in here to do this sport are willing to take those punches. And they're willing to do it to help you get better. So believe me to say that if you're, don't try to like fucking kill us.
Yeah.
You know, but hit us.
But
like,
that's all sparring.
use your technique and hit us.
But that's all sparring even outside of the genders. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to spar anybody who's trying to kill me.
Right.
Regardless if you're a girl or boy. It's like, control yourself, brother.
Yeah.
80%.
We're
If
here,
we
to
can
get,
get to
we're here to get
80%,
better, not kill each other.
Yes. That's a great sparring round.
Yes.
Is if we get to 100%, now we're fighting for free. Now we're both stupid.
Yes. So he eventually like loosened up, and afterwards he's like, man, you're quick, and like I really needed that. So it was like breaking that in of like, you can hit a girl. Like, we're in here for a sport. We're both in here for the same reason. I didn't walk in here thinking I wasn't going to get hit. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. I promise you're not going to hurt me. I'm fine. Just do it. And like, it probably took 2 more rounds to get him to loosen up. But like, you know, but there's the guys that just won't too. Like, they just, which is, it's like, I can't disrespect somebody's religion, right? If that's how you were brought up and you don't want to hit a girl,
That's their
it's fine.
culture. That's their...
Yeah.
I would say that that's also almost... This is where I want to go to it. If you don't mind, I want to take a slight path on this conversation. How do you, as a female, navigate this world where there's like gender norms of previous generations combined with the progressive nature of human, I would say, prosperity? So it's like, you know, men were brought up a certain way to protect, provide, and all these other things. But now we live in a society where women are empowered so that they can be their own individual selves and be prosperous without necessarily being tied to a man. But in the realm of sport, I want to leave all the other bullshit out of it. I'll leave that for like Andrew Tate and those guys. You know what I mean? I'm talking about specifically Kelly D'Angelo at the age she is now, with the experience and knowledge and maturity that she has now. How do you view that? Do you think that the future is brighter if we hold on to some of these rules and customs? Do you think the future looks brighter if we succumb to the times and really push equality in all aspects? Or do you think there's like this homogenous soup that needs to occur where we can still take some of the gender roles, we can still take some of the progressivism, and find this middle ground going forward?
So it's funny because this conversation actually like carries over to both of my careers, fighting and the firehouse, because obviously they're both male dominated things and women have had to try to progress into both of them, right? So it's funny because I'll probably piss some people off with this.
Just don't say names. Just don't say names.
I'm just going to say equality is a weird term for me, because take fighting, for example. We want to come into the gym and be part of everything, right? But also, like, a lot of the coaches, like, I mean, women's fighting is only, when was Ronda Rousey's first? Was like 05 was when Rousey was first in the UFC?
No, not 05. You talking about 2015?
No, Ronda Rousey, her first fight in the UFC.
Not 05.
Oh.
100%. Because the UFC didn't start blowing up until around 08, 09. I'm talking about maybe 2015.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's 15.
They were in Strikeforce beforehand.
Yeah.
Maybe her first MMA
but not like
fight.
like it wasn't really recognized.
In the grand scheme, MMA is a very nascent young sport.
Yes.
And then if you want to talk about,
especially for women, though.
There is an interview where, sorry, not an interview, but a press conference where Dana White is actively talking about how women will never be in the UFC.
Yeah, I've seen
Fast
that.
forward 4 years later,
Yes.
he inaugurates Ronda Rousey as the first female champion at, I believe, the bantamweight division, and announces the first I believe they were the headline of that UFC. Forgive me, I don't know the name of the UFC, but I do know that she fought Liz Carmouche.
Yes.
For the belt.
Yeah. So I mean, like, MMA is
4
new.
years from never gonna happen to here's our
Right.
champion headlining a UFC card.
Right. So, like, think about, though, how new MMA is anyway, but for women. And you're talking about, so, if you go into the gym and you train, you have a pretty consistent, like, spot of where your body is, like, all the time, right? You may have your good days, your bad days, your injuries. You're a little low on energy this day. Maybe you didn't have the right meals today, right? A woman's body changes every week.
Yeah.
Every single fucking week. So a lot of the coaches that have been in the game for a long time, that have had a few females now, most of them still don't get, like, we can't train like small men. Like, I think that's how a lot of their thought processes still are, is like, well, you'll just do all the things the guys do, but like on a smaller scale. Where I'm just gonna you're just a small dude in here. Which is cool because you want to be treated as one of the guys, right? You want to come in, do all the same work, not be like put aside or anything.
You don't want to be treated different.
Right. But your training should also be different. We have, like, coming up on, period time that week, you are so tired and weak. Like, going in to try to strength train, you lose like up to 30% of your strength. Can you imagine just feeling like you just can't fucking do, like, it sucks. And none of us want that. None of us ever want to play that victim card. Like, ugh, it's Shark Week. I can't do it. Like, none of us.
Week.
Right. None of us want to do
I'm
that.
stealing that.
So it's like we don't ever want to, like, come off as the victim in the gym, but we also know our performance is down. So you're fighting a low performance mentally anyway. Then you're gonna have this. You're probably only gonna have about a good week and a half every month. That your hormones are stable where they should be. Everything's at a consistent level where you can have high performance. So think about that with fights, especially lower weights. Our fight opportunity is so low, especially I dropped to 105. My fight opportunity went down so much. Then it went down a notch because of my work schedule. Then it went down another notch because if I was healthy in between. And then you got to think, I think some girls actually do try to line up their fights based on their cycle of, like, knowing where they're at.
That'd be
then
smart.
It'd be smart, but, like, you don't have that opportunity, especially if you're a lower weight class, and those barely pop up. So whenever these girls are doing these weight cuts, they know that it can throw off our weight cut, but they don't know how much it can throw off our performance and our camp and our lead up to that. And our, it's crazy how different all of our bodies are compared to, like, coming in and trying to compete with, like, the guys training.
I was completely ignorant to all of these factors until I met Ashley Cummins.
Right.
Ashley Cummins was the first female fighter that I ever, like, interacted with. And I got to live with her for a year as roommates when we were training at the Wolves Den. And when I tell you, it was illuminating
Right.
to some of the plights that female athletes have, because she had a fight where, like, camp was going great, the cut was going great, and then guess what happened week of the fight? Starts to retain.
Period?
Yeah, starts to retain some water.
You retain up to, like, 8-10 pounds in water.
The cut went from, like, she was cutting just fine to, like, she's gaining weight. And I'm just like, holy. And then I'm her roommate, so, like, it's not like, because sometimes, like, you go to a gym and, like, someone's kind of telling you the shit that's going on, then you bounce out of sight, out of mind. So she's telling us all this stuff at the gym. We go home. I'm seeing, she gets on the scale, fuck, I gained 2 pounds. I'm like, I don't even know how that's possible. Because I'm a guy.
Right. Like, yeah, right. Where'd you ate the cookies, right? Like, you're no. What'd you get on the way home?
No. I will say this. I'm when I'm out of camp, now I'm forever out of camp. I was awful. Like, when I was out of camp, no diet, no nothing. But I have, my superpower was discipline. We got to fight, change the lifestyle. 400 calories a day, get back on the thing, chicken and rice, no off days for the next 12 weeks. The tough part is I just assumed that everybody could do that. And
no, you do that and your body reacts. We do that.
Maybe
it will, maybe it won't.
And that's what Ashley showed me.
Yes.
I was like, dude, it is just, and here's the other thing. You could do everything right. Your body's reacting. You're doing all these things. And like Ashley had, a perfect weight cut, a perfect camp, all these other things, healthy, work was in line, all these other things, 3 days before the fight.
Right.
And I was like, dude, fuck. And I hate to say it this way, but like you also have this anxiety of like, there is a natural human experience that is happening in females' bodies. And there was this insecurity of like, well, what if this falls out? And then
I would never get white fight clothing. The girls that do that, I am like, good for you. Good for you. Or honestly, I had about 2.5 years there when I was at 105. I actually didn't have a period, so I probably could have.
For 2 years?
Yes. It fucked my hormones up real bad, trying to weight cut and stay so low.
The weight cut specifically? Weight
cuts and trying to walk. So, like, my walking around weight, fighting at 115, the highest I got was 125. But I was usually...
You're also, like, what, 5'4"?
5'2".
5'2", sorry. Girl,
like 5'2".
You should have agreed with me, like, yeah, 5'5".
But, like, I walked around at, like, 120, 122. So, 115, I was a shrimp. Like, when you started getting to the LFA in Invicta and stuff like that, I was a shrimp walking around at that. So everybody is like, you need to go 105, especially after Ashley did, because we walked around the same weight.
Yeah. You guys are also dense girls. Like when you're not in camp, like you're not like, it's not like you're, oh, I'm 125, like with a gut. You're 125, just full.
Yeah. And we also have the great, public service kind of jobs that also fucks your hormones up. Most people don't know that. So, like...
Because of the stress?
Yes. Like, fight or flight response stuff.
For context, for people that don't know, Kelly is a firefighter. Ashley Cummins was a police officer. Yeah. So that both of them are first responders.
Yes.
Forgive me, for some people that might not know.
So we had that to, like, the weight thing made it even worse with that. But, like, so I think we both tried to walk lower so that we didn't have as big a weight cut when the moment came, because we also both would take fights weeks out if that got offered to us, so trying to walk that low, stay consistent with that, my hormones just like
shit the bed.
Yeah.
Did you ever talk to your doctor? Like, did they ever have conversations about that? Because I'm sure, like, after you miss like one or two, after you miss the first one, you might think you're pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So then you had that scare. You're like, oh my god, I didn't have my period this month. Like, you take pregnancy tests, they show up negative, and you're like, well, okay, what the fuck is happening then?
Yep. So
by the way, if I go down an avenue, I'm not asking for any graphic or anything. Just whatever you feel comfortable talking about.
You're good.
Okay.
I had that talk with the doctor, and I actually. So you ever got like all of your hormones tested, like testosterone and stuff like that?
I think it would shock you at how few times I've seen a doctor.
Okay. So, well.
Because if they did,
when you don't have a
I'd
period,
have a list of things.
You go seeing doctors and start trying to figure out what the fuck's wrong. And I ended up going to a hormone specialist, and my stuff was so out of whack. And then, like, my testosterone.
How old were you when you went to this, out of curiosity?
Oh, shit. It was, like, after my second fight on Invicta. So, I don't know. I need Jimmy here as my...
28, 29, 30? Late 20s, early 30s?
Late 20s, early 30s, okay. Yeah. And... she did all my testing, and so women need testosterone too. Some people think like women are just full of estrogen and dudes are just full of testosterone. It's super weird, but we need all of them. On the testing strip that came out, mine was a flat line. I had no testosterone.
That doesn't shock
me. So testosterone helps you build muscle. It helps your ligaments. It helps all your repairs in your body. Yes, your recovery. It keeps our hormones stable. There's a lot of things that, like, you need it. You have to have it. And I was just flatlining. I wasn't even showing up on the graph.
That doesn't shock me, because men constantly talk about how their T levels are drastically diminished during camp because of the stress they put on their bodies. It makes sense to me that women would also have the same thing, but even more of a factor, because you have there's testosterone, epitestosterone, there's estrogen, and forgive me, chemists and hormone...
Well, there's T, there's free T, there's
I'm not doing this topic justice, but all I know is through a prolonged period of stress, these hormones start to diminish.
Right.
And then you start getting the lactic acid first for tissue, than the hormonal imbalance in terms of the rest of the body. If that can happen to men, for sure, it happens even to an X level to women because you guys also have that hormone like roller coaster
Right.
every month.
So then add that I work 48-hour shifts.
48?
48.
Okay. Well,
I'm at the firehouse for 2 days in a row. There are some firehouses that you get to sleep a lot. Like, they don't run a lot of calls at night. Unfortunately, I've never really got to be at one of those, especially the one I'm at now. So add not sleeping. Most of the time I would average 6 to 7 hours the whole time I was there, which means like two hours. You get up for a call. Maybe another hour. You get up for a call. So coming off of that, which also diminishes, a lot of firefighters are on testosterone. Because
doesn't shock me.
at night when you sleep is when everything in your body restores. So their T stays low because they never get the full cycle of sleep. So
do you think firefighters on average that aren't maybe diminished in testosterone because of that?
yeah.
So it's like a common occurrence.
Yes. So I had the doctor literally tell me, between a pro fight career and being a firefighter, you are the definition of burning the candle at both ends. She's like, you're getting to the end. If you got to do something here.
What does that mean, getting to the end?
I've been burning it at both ends. My body is no longer producing its own testosterone.
Oh, so you're going to have to get on something
Like,
afterwards.
something's going to have to give. You're going to have to quit everything and start taking care of yourself or something. Well, of course, like, I was like, I ain't fucking quitting shit. You know, I think Adam was just on here and talked about, like, you can't be good at everything kind of thing. Like, I was one of the people that's like, that I can. Watch this. I actually had to go on testosterone for a little bit just to get my body
acclimated
to start producing again. And it was like fucking roller coaster because my body hadn't had it for a while. So it wasn't,
Did you immediately hit a menstrual cycle?
So first I got really moody, unfortunately, for Jimmy. Like I went from like, I was crying all the time to, I'm like, I will fight any motherfucker in this grocery store. Like, that is...
From emotional to let the world burn.
I can't do this anymore to, like, let's fucking go. You see that guy in that car? We're going to pull over and fight him. Like, I went... It was a lot.
It's funny because I know your partner, too, so, like, Jimmy would be like, relax.
Yeah, no, he's... That boy has been through so much. I feel... But for, like, both the careers I've tried to juggle, he's the best support system anybody could ever have. So, yeah, he went through a lot with that. I like to complain about my struggle with it, but Jimmy definitely had a bad end of it, too. So getting my hormones regulated again, and I finally started having a period again. And that's when I went back up to 115. Because I was like, I can't. They warned me that if you stay down this path, which, you know, I never planned to be like a Ronda Rousey or Mackenzie Dern or anything like that. I enjoyed fighting. I wanted to make it to the highest stage I could, as long as it was making me happy. But not over, like, I'm firefighter first.
Yeah.
You know.
You have a career and dreams.
Yes. And they're like, you know, you got to start making some choices because if this is the road you're going to head down, you will never be able to have children. So.
Is children something that you want to have?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was a big talk. And, you know, I have the best husband I could ever ask for. So he never was like, well, can't do this anymore. You know, he's like, well, I guess we'll just have to talk about it. And if we have to adopt, you know, like, best husband ever, right?
Implying that Jimmy was willing to go down any path,
whatever path
that you decided.
I needed to go down.
Had you wanted to retire from fighting, he would have been fine.
Exactly.
Had you wanted to pursue fighting, he would have been fine.
And just wreck whatever
We're
hormones I had left.
These waters accordingly.
Yeah. So I decided I had to let up because I want to have a family and have kids and
that's fine. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're also like something you committed so much time and energy to, taking a step back. You know, it's hard. It's hard, especially when you're nose deep. I hit a couple bumps in the road, like, but I was also on a path with it. My fight with like Jillian DeCourcy. During that camp, I ruptured my glute, like tore and like ruptured stuff in my hip, tore a labrum, tore my glute max, glute medius, and glute medius tendon.
She broke her ass.
I broke my butt. And it was like, it looked like, I know, like, I looked like I had an alien coming out of my hip. I was on crutches for a week during that camp, and I still fought. But, like, my body was not healing, and my body was just breaking all the time.
Because you're putting it under stress. You're not
So
allowing
much stress,
for it to.
Nothing's, yeah. Like, I was coming off 48-hour shifts. The morning I got off, I would try to sleep. Most likely not, because it fucks up your whole sleep schedule for the 4-day. And then I was getting into training sessions a day on my 4 days off.
Two, sorry.
So 48 hours straight at work. And then I'd come home. I'd train, go home for a little bit, do whatever I could to keep life going there, and then go back to the gym and do that for 4 days, and then get ready and go back into the firehouse for 48 hours. And that was what I did for years. And, you know, like as a fighter, you give up family events. You give up social events. You give up friends.
It's a selfish sport.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, you have their functions at the gym, but, you know, it's different. It's a different kind of relationship. So weighing all of that out was really, really hard to be like, God, I've just committed so much to this and taken a step back and making it to Invicta and LFA and being on a platform that you feel like you're just still a couple steps away from getting like a good opportunity.
What do you think is a good opportunity, UFC?
Yeah.
Did you want to be there? Let me ask you a question. Did you want to be there for one fight just to say that you were a UFC vet, or would you have wanted to have a career there?
I think it would have been like everything in the sport where you're like, you start, like I started boxing just to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I'm already doing this. I might as well have a fight. And then you have a fight, and you're like, well, I mean, what's one more? So I originally told myself just to get a fight in the UFC. Because I fought girls that made it to the UFC.
Yeah.
I fought
you and Ashley.
beat girls that made it to the UFC, yeah. And so I was like, it makes it feel, you know, closer, like in grasp.
But that's kind of what I'm harping at into the essence of my question. Would you have felt if you would have had one fight in the UFC? Does it make it? Do all these feelings start to go away, or do you think what would have happened was, well, what if I would have had two?
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like starting the sport. It leads into everything else. I think I would have told myself I just need the one, just to say I made it to the UFC, just to say like I had a UFC fight, and then depending upon how that fight goes, you're like, oh, I know I could do better than that, or it didn't show my performance. I don't want to go out that way. Or if you lose, you're like, fuck, I can't go out on a loss. Or, you know, I still do that to myself now. Like I've thought about coming back into it because I wasn't happy with my last fight, my last pro fight, my performance.
Boy, tell me about it.
I mean, like, I have that video out in the air of like, you know, I got TKO'd on LFA. You know,
I got TKO'd on Shamrock.
Right, we all have that.
At least you got TKO'd on LFA.
Well, yeah. So I mean, like, you have those regrets in the sport. I think everybody is. So I think that's where it becomes where it's like, when do I let go?
I don't think you ever do.
And that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, but it's the price we pay for the life we want.
Yeah.
The same Arion that got into MMA is not the same Arion that exists today. I'm just not. That's
where I think your why changes. And then
Yes.
you have to reevaluate, is that why worth it anymore?
The conversation about your menstrual cycle and having a family and the lifestyle you were living, was this, obviously you had this discussion before you quit. Sorry, quit is not a right term. Before you retired from competition. I like that. Because I still train, I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
So we never quit. It's always going to be a part of me.
Yeah.
But maybe competing at that level is not going to be a part of me. You had this conversation with your doctor, with Jimmy, with your family, I'm sure, but it wasn't coinciding with like, okay, I'm done fighting now. I'm sure you had that conversation and then there was another fight.
Yes.
How was that camp? Because I'm sure we have a lot of similarities in this, Kelly. I didn't think we did until this conversation. Did you feel like you were waiting for a loss to really put that nail in the coffin of like choosing for you? Because if I would have beat Austin Bashy, I would have kept fighting, and I don't think that was the right path for me.
Well, see, my last fight was a win, but it wasn't my kind of win. Like, I was always so even my losses in the sport, I felt like I got a lot of, like, I'd get fight of the night, or I'd get a lot of compliments of, like,
your performance.
Fucking just, I was out there to fight, and I didn't feel like I had that in me anymore when I was in there. You know what I mean? Like,
the killer is gone.
I'm here to entertain. I'm not here to fight, kind of thing. Like, I felt like I was in there fighting for something that I did not even know anymore.
Did you ever felt like you fought because you fight?
Because you're a fighter.
It's like, oh, okay, I'm a fighter, so I'm gonna fight.
And in that moment, maybe I figured out, like, I don't know who I was fighting for anymore. Because I fought through a lot of demons getting into this sport. Like, I fought through, like, I had an eating disorder in high school. I was a chunky girl that got picked on. I had the abusive boyfriend. So I think there was demons that I fought through the sport. And that's why I tell everybody to get into this, is because you learn that you learn more strengths and weaknesses about yourself than you would have ever imagined. And not only that, you can pick out your own flaws and maybe, like, reevaluate some things. You like turn into somebody that it can either bring out the good or bad in you. And it's if you can take it and change it. Because if you're not changing it, you're choosing it, right? Like, if you're not going to change your behavior, you're choosing to act like that. But the fact this sport can bring that out in people, and the people around you. Like, I'm sure you learned real friendship, right? Did it kind of point out some real friendship in the sport? Like,
yes.
Did you notice on your highs who you got messages from, and on your lows who you got messages from?
That's why I left the Wolves Den.
Yeah. So a lot of people will point that out with gyms, is like, man, when you're on that fucking train, to the top, you get all kinds of weird messages from people you haven't fucking talked to in forever, or
everyone believes in you, whatever that means.
Right. But whenever that train derails, it's like very few that send a message that there's, like, something behind it. Not just like, oh, better luck next time. Oh, the comeback's better than the fucking fall, right?
Well, I also hated the fact that once I got my first loss, I realized that my value as a fighter and a human was directly correlated to my record. And I was like, really?
Right.
I haven't lost for 5 years.
Right.
Then I lose my first split decision, like, loss. And now I'm chopped liver. I'm like,
right.
Really?
Yes.
It really, it hurt me.
No.
It fucking hurt me.
I think that does happen a lot of places. And that's where, like, the self-evaluation comes in, too, of, like, you have to learn your own self-worth and not let other people put anything on it, right?
I decided something different. I decided that I'm not fighting. Fighting is just something I do. And that was the catalyst for my defeat. Because I think that in order to be a world champion, fighting is you. For better and worse.
Your identity.
That has to be you.
Yeah.
Everything you do, everything you say, everything you eat, everything you think correlates to that goal of fighting. And that shift in mindset for me, because I now think about it objectively. Like, okay, like, where did things change? Like, why did I choose fighting? When did I start choosing lives outside of fighting? When did I finally make that subconscious decision before I ever really, like, understood it? It was that. It was like, okay, it wasn't that I lost. It was the reaction to it. Because before my final loss, I had a loss before that. And it was like the shift, the delta between winner and loser was so vast that I was like, no,
right.
I refuse. I refuse. And that's, in a lot of ways, the stair step to my final descent. But I don't look back at it, and forgive me, I don't look back at it as a bad thing. I love the way my life turned out. I love the life that I have now. There's nothing I would put a price on in terms of the family that I have now. I'm glad things happened the way they did, or else I wouldn't be the person I am.
Do you have the what ifs?
I don't think those will ever go away. And I also think that they're healthy to have because it's a constant reinforcement. Because when do those what ifs happen? When things are bad.
Yeah.
Do you start thinking about fighting when shit's going great? No.
No.
You're like, oh my God, all the decisions I made were amazing. So you start to have those doubts, those what ifs when things are on the descent. And then it's a constant reinforcement of the lifestyle that I've chosen. Because yes, you're absolutely correct. I'm only 32. If I really wanted to, I can get back in shape in 4 or 5 months. I can get back into it. My very first question is why?
Yeah.
For what?
No, I do the same thing now.
For what?
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm genuinely excited about the future. The personal enjoyment that I get from fighting is immense. It's up there with sex and drugs. Winning a fight, sex, drugs.
Okay.
10 out of 10. We'll do it again.
I think most would have it the same. Yeah.
Hanging out with my daughter,
Oh, I'm sure.
15 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's no comparison. It's I'm very happy with the life that I've chosen to have. However, you start, you get in fights, discussions about the future, the stresses of life. You start to think to yourself, man, what if I would have chosen to just be single and continue this path or whatever? But then it's like, as soon as I have those like what ifs of like, I became docile and I lost my edge. But then I think to myself, I'm glad I did. I'm 32 years old. I don't need to be a fucking killer.
You're only, gosh, you're a baby still.
I know. But I'm sure, I don't think this is isolated towards me. I'm sure you have very similar thoughts.
No, absolutely. Like I went down and punched the bag in our basement the other day, and I haven't done any bag work in a while. And I was like, after that, I'm like, I never had a pro boxing match. I started with boxing and only did amateur boxing. I'm like, that's what I need to end on. Maybe I just needed to like have a pro boxing match. And then I sat there and I'm like, finding people to spar with, finding people to spar with. Do you want to wait? I don't want to cut a bunch of weight, but I don't want to fight some big bitch, and I'm like,
That's exactly how I feel. I walk around 185. Like 180, 185 is what I walk around at.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how much weight am I willing to cut? $1, maybe like 10 pounds. I'm not fighting at 170. What am I going to do? Fight Buckley and Tyron Woodley?
Right,
I'm good.
Right.
Like, I'm good. I lost to 35ers. I'm not going to fight 70ers.
Yes.
So then it's this constant like reevaluation of like, okay, I might have this internal dialogue with myself, but what's feasible in reality?
Right.
And the same thing that got me to the point that I was, this like mentality of like wanting to be the best, wanting to do it right, wanting to train properly, the discipline that I had with my weight cut, I just don't have it anymore. That does not make me lesser than. It's just a shift in mentality and a shift in what I value. And that's when I knew, that's why I retired. Because when I was like 25, it was all about fighting. Everything I was doing, it was about fighting.
Yes.
When I was 29, nothing I was doing was about fighting. Fighting was a hindrance towards everything. Fighting was a hindrance towards my businesses. Fighting was a hindrance towards my professional career. Fighting was a hindrance towards my relationship with my fiance at the time, who was 6 months pregnant. And I was like, at what point do I no longer have the capacity to be selfish? Because fighting is a selfish sport. It's not good or bad. It just is.
Well, see, I was always jealous of people who could focus solely on fighting for a while. Because when I got into it, it was a little later than most people. So I'm going to
How old when you started getting into fighting? Competing, you mean? When you say fighting, you mean competing?
Like, I went pro, late 20s? Might even been,
28?
probably around there. I mean, I'm gonna be 38 in February.
Holla.
So, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but I definitely had a later start than most people.
Oh.
Yes. So I've always wondered too, like, if I would have stuck with boxing, what would have happened? So I think just like being able to like get that off the plate of like having at least one pro boxing match to feel that, and
Does it matter to you?
it does. I think it's kind of a tribute to boxing because
That's what got you in the sport.
it got me in the sport. I met some of the people that still mean the most to me in the sport through boxing. And, like, as the send-off, I would also want to pull like my very first boxing coach into the corner. You know, he's much older and like.
But full circle.
Yeah. So I think close it out that way kind of thing would be some closure on my part too.
What did they say when you decided to pivot to MMA? Out of curiosity.
So my boxing coach wasn't happy about it originally. But I think he also knew. So I showed up to a Golden Gloves to fight, and there was no girls at all.
Really?
Not a single female showed up to fight.
So not even weight classes, just no women at all.
No other women at all. So my coach actually pushed to let me into the men's division,
so you
my weight class, so I could compete, and they would not allow it.
What was the justification?
They just said they wouldn't do co-ed. They wouldn't do co-ed. They would only keep it divided, which is, I think, ran by a very older group of people still.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Once you go past puberty, I actually agree with it. I don't want to see a 25-year-old woman compete against a 25-year-old man if they're both trained and like they're. This is a weird one for me. I think that if you were to be put up against most men your size, you could actually fuck them up. The variable in that is then once you get men that are trained because of like the development.
No, absolutely. They're stronger.
If you're 16, 17, 18 years old and you're like woman wrestling, want to wrestle with the men, fine. But the problem with like 25, 26, 27 is now you have a full grown man. And maybe it's also a bias that I have. I don't like the idea of a man hitting a woman with like full force, competing. Maybe I'm old fashioned.
On my coach's part, though, I was already doing that. Like when we
like sparring?
When we sparred, like I said, at that gym it was fighting. Like I was already competing against some guys.
So to you already felt like you were doing it.
Yes.
So
like I was not terrified about getting in there at all.
And he had no problem holding the sparring.
No.
Did he have a problem trying to put you in co-ed, or he was the one trying to initiate?
He was the one trying to push it.
God bless. Okay.
Which I also appreciated because that means he believed in me that I could do it, and I believed in it. Like having a coach like that, like he pushed hard, but it like also believed in me beyond anybody else, which makes you like when you have a mentor like that, you're like, well, fuck, if they think I can do it,
you don't want to let them down.
And I can do it, you know, like I think I can do it. So, yeah, like that was a big thing was like showing up to stuff like that and not having competitors. And then there wasn't a whole lot of women boxing in the area at the time. So I didn't have, especially lower, like I could have probably took like a 155 or something like that. And at that time, starting out, I was walking at like 119.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was to him, he kind of let go a little bit for me to do MMA, knowing that more women were starting to go into MMA because I guess they were making the transition from grappling, you know?
Well, the market was also starting to like, because I remember Strikeforce was the original like bigger promotion that allowed for female fighters. That's how like Gina Carano and actually Ronda Rousey and Chris Cyborg actually started.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Invicta at first. It was actually Strikeforce.
Yes. So like I think there was that platform starting. So he knew
there was an avenue.
Yeah. And I could get fights. Like I was putting in all this time. Why not get fights? So that's when I got pushed to like kind of work with like Benny and stuff. That was like a really far drive for us. So it got hard to like hold down going to 21st Century. And that's when I got went to Burger when he was still open. Loved training with Burger. Burger ran
also a predominantly jiu-jitsu gym.
Yes. And that's what I needed. Like they knew I was behind. I was way behind. Even when I went pro, I was still way behind on jiu-jitsu. It was not like if you watch my pro debut on, I guess it was RFA, converted over, but they announced me as the boxer. Like that was most of my fights was known as the boxer. So I was way behind on it. So coming into Burgers based on jiu-jitsu, had some smaller guys. You remember like the Newmans?
Yeah.
Like they were all there. Ashley was there. Like I had small people for the first time in a long time.
Armfield. You had a bunch of guys out there. Dan O'Connor.
Well, Garrett Armfield was actually one of my first boxing
He had a brother though too, right? Clayton.
Clayton, yeah.
Did Clayton also train there?
Yes.
Okay, so
So they
sorry.
were down at the boxing gym with me. I have a picture of me and Clayton. Well, Garrett laughs. I just went to Canada to see one of his UFC cards. Me and Jimmy went there. He's like a little brother to us, but like we laughed afterwards. We met afterwards, and we were talking. And he was pretty young at the time. Like he was 15. So I came in. Was sparring this little shit that been doing it since he was like 8 or 9, you know.
This little shit.
Right, cocky little fucker too at the time, like because he could play with the full grown men in the gym because he had been doing it for so long. And I got so fucking mad one day. He put his hands down and was like, I hauled off and I knocked him down.
Oh, okay.
And he's still like. I give him shit
a
about
full-grown woman knocked down a 15-year-old boy.
Fucking so mad at him. Like, and
we're gonna clip this and we're gonna tag him.
Do it. He deserved it. I am not. That's one time in my life I hit a child.
Kelly's like, I beat up a kid.
I hit a child and he deserved it. And but we joke about it because like he'll even joke about it. Like Kelly knocked me down one of the first times we sparred. I was like, you're getting cocky, little fucker. Like, so I had, like I said, and I still keep in contact with him. He's out living his best life in the UFC, and I'm super proud of him. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Came from a really great family. They're like some really good people to have in our lives. But he, that was my like welcome to the game, you know, and once I started like getting out into MMA, I think he was kind of doing the same thing for a while. Clayton had kind of paved an MMA game for him a little bit. I think helped him out a lot.
Yeah,
but,
Clayton was his older brother.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think we all knew he was going to be something in the
special.
sport one day. Yeah. But I just had to like go to a gym closer. Still was a drive for us to go to Burgers. And then once I went pro, I had my pro debut. And the next week, Burgers is like, we got to close the gym. So, you know,
What was that conversation like?
He announced it at training when we all showed up. I mean,
Before class or after?
I think it was before.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. But I mean, like he had a family, you know, he was working too and trying to handle all that plus run a gym and
I think running any business is tough. Yeah. Running a gym and running a restaurant are two things I have no interest in doing.
Yes. And I don't know. There's a lot of different characters that come into a gym. So, you know, you're dealing with that too. And I get it. I was just like, man, I fucking hit this platform and everything that you built to get comfortable and be at that place. Like, I got to start all over. So that's when I started trying out gyms. Met you, Wolfson.
Through Ashley, though, because Ashley had originally trained at Burgers and then went to St. Charles on May.
Yes.
And then from St. Charles on May found her way to Wolf's Den. And that's how I met Ashley.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, you guys would have been great training partners for me, but I tried out, like, Burger told me, go around and try out gyms, see what you feel like, what you like. Walking into St. Charles, like, I came from that super high intensity from boxing. And that's how they were. Like, every training was a fight, and you went hardcore. So I think it just felt like my place to be.
Do you think people take, and when I say people, I guess I want to specify gym owners or whatever. It's tough, right? Because you are correct. Like, there are a lot of personalities. There are a lot of different people from different walks of life. Different goals, the hobbyist versus the person trying to be world champion. Sometimes I feel like perhaps gym owners may take it a little bit more personal when someone decides to come or go.
Yes.
Do you think is that something that I might be feeling in isolation, or do you also
absolutely
agree?
I think there's a lot of animosity between the gyms. I think it's maybe gotten better.
I know it's gotten better.
Last couple of years, but
anecdotally, in the last 11 years, from where it was to where it is now, night and day.
Yeah.
Now, is there still some competition? Absolutely. We're in a competitive field. But is there malice? Is there animosity? I think that has diminished. The competitive nature is going to be there.
Yes.
Someone wants to be number one, but you can do it in a productive capacity.
Yes. I do agree that all that's gotten better. And I think it's just like working a job I work, there's just so much worse shit out there that you see all the time that it like the things that become a fucking issue to people in the gym or that they want to talk shit on or like it becomes annoying and like
Because you realize how small it is.
yes, and I just don't have the patience for a lot of it sometimes of like so I think like I can come off as a dick at the gym even for like it's not really a fucking problem or you know quit talking shit because nobody really cares and there's worse things to worry about out there.
Yeah.
But at that time making the switch over I do think it absolutely affected friendships for where I chose.
Oh, because of St. Charles on Mary?
Choosing St. Charles over Wolfston, I definitely think affected friendships. I think it put a strainer on me and Ashley's relationship a lot because she was full-time Wolfston. I was choosing St. Charles, and then we were also in a similar weight class. So I think like there was like
yes, but you guys were also at different career trajectories. Yes. Like Ashley was a little bit more tenured than you.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, I always looked at it as like, regardless of the choice that you would have made, cross-training would have just benefited both of you because there were so few women at that weight class, at that level, that could work with one another. It's like, yeah, you could have chosen to be competitive, but I never looked at that as, I never saw you and Ashley at odds. I only ever saw you guys as someone that could like help one another, and iron sharpens iron, so to speak.
And I think that's how we saw it, but I think there was coaches that definitely was like, hey, it could happen. It could happen.
You think so?
Yeah. So
did you ever have a talk with her?
So at one point we talked like I said I never wanted to fight her because Guns and Hoses would try to make it happen too.
Well, that's also because like you have a cop and you have a firefighter. Yes,
exactly.
Same like weight class, same everything. Like it's low hanging fruit.
And I was like Ashley was in my wedding and everything. So like I never wanted to have that. Like fighting with women is different. Like dudes can like beat each other's ass and be like, let's go have a beer. It's not always like that with women. Like really? Yeah, like bitches hold grudges. Like shit gets weird and when people get competitive against each other with females. Like it's even in the gym with like training partners. And I think some old school coaches can like kind of pit them against each other a little bit sometimes.
Do you feel like that's what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was definitely in there. And I think it happens to girls now. I think like when they're constantly training with each other or going against each other, like they start basing their performance too much on what their coaches say about how they're doing against that person. And it gets to be a strained relationship for sure.
Do you still talk to Ashley?
No, we haven't really been in contact a whole bunch. I was going to start a program here kind of similar to what she does out there with like the police force. Have you seen that where she does like the self-defense?
I have. This is where I've fallen off as a person. Like I love Ashley.
Yeah.
Phenomenal human being, but I haven't talked to her at all in like the last couple of years, and that's just because of me. Like has nothing to do with anything like that other than I'm really bad at keeping in contact with people. Yeah. So forgive me, Ashley. Like.
No, like I reached out to her a few times because I wanted to start kind of a self-defense thing here for responders as well. So like asked her.
Is that what she's doing out in California?
Yeah, she has a page and stuff and does a lot of that out there, which is cool because I do think most police forces need extra
additional training?
Yes.
For female or for in general?
In general.
Yeah.
Like we've helped with the police academy here a couple times, and it's surprising to me what they don't know. They don't get to continue. Like they get like a once a year update or, classes kind of in through the year, but it's not like a continuous evolution on that. So.
Do you think? I want to be careful how I ask this question. You are allowing for all walks of life to enter police and firefighting. There are metrics in which you have to pass, both physical and mental, in order to do the job. But don't you think that's kind of like a loaded subject to try to make sure everybody has? And by the way, I had Todd Fox on, who's in law enforcement, and I've deduced that proper law enforcement on a scale as wide as America is actually impossible. It's impossible.
Yes.
There's not enough resources. There's not enough people. There's you can't do it.
Right.
So you're going to have some instances in which shit falls under the crack that gets hyper-focused on by mainstream media. I would also make the same thing about firefighting right now with California, right? It's like you can have as many firefighters as you want. Perhaps maybe some things are not managed properly or resources aren't adequate in certain areas to properly respond to certain circumstances.
Yes.
I would agree with you that if you were to take a police officer at random or a firefighter at random, perhaps they're not adequately trained. And adequately trained is based on like the perception of who's measuring them, right? So like for you, the threshold is going to be higher than like someone who hasn't done any of these things.
So that might be like a whole other conversation on its own. So I'm actually an instructor at the fire academy. And my main thing that I try to look over is the PT, which...
Physical therapy?
Well, they call it PT, but it's our PT in the morning, like our PE.
Oh, like physical education,
Yes,
like upkeeping of the bodies.
Yes. And we have a test called the CPAT test, which is like your physical agility test to just... you pretty much get this card, and you have to have it to work at any of the county departments to say that you passed this physical agility test.
I'm physically able to do the job.
Yes. So I've been doing this field, firefighting, for, I'm going to be coming up on 20 years. Right.
Congratulations.
I started volunteering right out of high school and got into it right away. And the physical agility test when I started was, in my opinion, much harder than the one now. So I feel like a lot of things, even in society, have kind of gotten like notched down.
I agree with you.
Softened up a little.
Adrian, do me a favor, because we're about to go down a rabbit hole that I'm going to enjoy. Can you grab me the red breast? That's the green bottle right there. Yeah. No. Let's go down this path. Talk to me more about.
Wait, what whiskey do you have? What kind of whiskey you got?
I have a bunch.
Do you have like a smoked, anything kind of like smoked?
What do you tell me what you like to drink, and I'll tell you what I think I have that you'll like.
Sweet and smoky.
What do you normally drink when you drink?
It's usually not a sipper. It's like a shotter.
That's fine.
Well,
what do you normally drink? so like when you go out, what do you normally drink?
Like there's a wild turkey that's like a smoked wild turkey.
If you want something smoked.
Do you want ice or you want straight up?
Ice.
If you want something smoked, when you drink whiskey or drink in general, do you enjoy the burn of the alcohol, or do you want it to be kind of curtailed by whatever the mixer is?
Mixer.
Okay, so you like the mixer. We ran out of Dickel. I'll tell you what she might like. Angel's Envy. Yeah. But can we do that on a sphere?
Yep.
And then let this sit for about 30 seconds in the sphere to get cool and a little diluted. But Angel's Envy is a little sweeter, so it's got a little honey, but it's got a burn to it.
Oh yeah,
it's a pretty higher proof.
Okay.
Angel's Envy, Jim Beam, and that Benchmark and Dickel. Those 4 whiskeys are like the whiskeys I give to people whenever they're like.
This is the one I started with.
Hold up! Don't drink it just yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
Are these like? Is it just a round cube, or does it? I thought it was
sphere?
like a flower for a second.
No, it's just a sphere. There's like a science to this, and Jeremy Johnson's like a. You know how they have sommeliers for wine? Yeah. Well, yeah. Jeremy is like a sommelier, but for whiskey, and he's the first person I talk to about whiskey where I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, I like the discrepancies in whiskey and all that stuff, but relax. It's
Jeremy. He's the one that's got the whiskey.
He's got the MMA bourbon.
Okay,
We're gonna have him back on too. He was episode 2. God bless Jeremy. No, episode 2 was Aaron. Jeremy was like top 5. I think Mike was number 5. Sorry. Anyway.
You're good.
Degrading. By the way, cheers.
Cheers.
A sip. Never hurt anybody.
I'm probably definitely gonna get in trouble now.
No. We haven't.
You never drink with me.
Oh shit. We haven't said any names up until now.
It just be name dropping for like the last hour. No.
Let me.
You know what? Fuck this guy too. No.
I feel like there is, that level, but.
Oh, it's good.
Good?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's fair. It'll also like if it's like it'll dilute over the course of time, and then like being colder will make it easier to drink.
No, that's good.
So anyway, firefighting, the physical aptitude for it seems to have degraded.
Softened up.
When you say softened up, give me like a time horizon, like because you've been in this for 20 years. So for like, has it been softened since year one, or when was that delta?
I would say over the last 8 to 10,
Okay.
really. And
Even
honestly,
in the state of Missouri, because we live in
yes.
St. Louis, Missouri.
And I think some of the problem is so 9/11 happened,
Yeah.
and everybody after that wanted to be a hero, right? It's like so competitive nature wise of getting into the career was harder. When I moved up to St. Louis and started trying to get into the career, there was places I was applying that there was over 300 applicants for one opening.
Wow.
And those were like the top-notch places to work. Those were like
Rural
mid-grade or like lower pay still, like but middle ground maybe of like pay benefits, what you're looking at in future career. Not to get that changes on admin and stuff like that constantly flops, but those is 300 applicants for one opening. And it was very much of like, there was a lot of like people who knew each other, networking in the fire service, just like any other career, I'm sure.
Who you know is more important than what you know.
Yes. And
always has.
And a lot of people don't
always will
admit that, but it did help, especially back then. It's gotten better now, but I also think there's a lot less people who want to do the job, which also comes with me being old and saying that I also think the generations have changed with that. Like,
I don't think you're old for saying that. I think you're correct.
I remember people saying that to me, like, these new generations, I feel like I do that now with the fire services. I feel like people don't want to do those jobs now. Like,
I would agree.
So we have a lot less
Do you think that's
applicants.
good or bad out of curiosity?
Well, that's where it comes in of like, there's so less applicants that I think fire service and police service kind of had to lower the bar.
Yes.
Which also lowers.
Not just you, by the way, military as well.
Yes. So that lowers what you're getting as an applicant.
Yeah.
And
shit in to shit out.
Right. So it sucks because it puts a strain on it either way. Either you don't have the people doing it because it's too challenging, or you have people doing it that maybe wouldn't hit a standard that you thought there should have been hit to do the job. I mean, I'm sure you've seen somebody get off a fire truck that you're like, how the fuck?
Girl, I see people in all walks of life where I'm like, what the fuck?
Right. So, but then I always looked at being a firefighter, honestly, as being an athlete.
Yeah.
Because in reality, depends on where you work. You the fucking shows you watch, Chicago Fire and all that. We don't do that cool shit all the time. Like, most of the time, majority of our job is medical calls. Over 90% of our job is medical calls. But
can you elaborate on that? Meaning, whenever an ambulance is called, a firefight.
Yes. So in the county, St. Louis County, for example, other states tend to be, a lot of them are different, but like St. Louis County, you have to be a paramedic to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
And that is, a lot of people don't know the difference. EMT and paramedic are different.
Emergency medical transportation and paramedic
Technician.
I thought it was transportation.
Emergency medical.
Fake news.
Technician.
Don't listen to me.
No, but that kind of lines up with like, because people will be like, the ambulance driver.
Amp.
All right. So that goes along with maybe we are just transport. But EMT, paramedic, the step over is EMT can do like, give oxygen, basic bandaging, take your vitals, very basic medical care, CPR. If you're a paramedic is when you can like put somebody on a 12 lead EKG, you can give them meds that affect their heart, you can intubate them where you stick the tube down their throat, you can give them IVs, you can do all that kind of stuff.
You're more learned in which you have the reliability to act immediately.
Yes, and you also have the liability to have things go wrong. Yeah. And it's your fault. So EMTs, they're kind of fading out. We don't really have many EMTs. Some public, private services, like if you've seen the Abbott trucks and stuff like that, some of them still have EMTs. But
the trajectory is towards paramedics.
yes, if you're going to get in the fire service, you have to have your paramedic license. So,
can you explain to me the difference in terms of like how much input goes into it? Like how difficult is it to become an EMT? How difficult is it to become a paramedic?
so that's another thing that's changed is there's a lot of fast tracks now. When I went through, it took about 2 years to become a paramedic.
Okay.
There are accelerated programs now where people can knock it out in a year or less.
Well, let me ask you this then, like just generically, do you think that time spent necessarily means effort put in? Because I would say that. Let me explain why I say that. I think that higher education, is broken because in any 4-year degree, you have prerequisites that you have to do that are called general education that are like regardless of whatever field you go in.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, like, why are these not courses taken in high school, public education?
Yeah.
That if I were to go to higher education, like when I went for my finance degree, the first 2 years were like bullshit classes anyway. So I was kind of like, wait, I'm paying this much money for this stuff that's not even going into the field of expertise that I'm going into. So like whenever I hear like expedited course, I actually think, oh, efficient. Like if you can do the same thing in 1 year that you could in 2, is that not better? But maybe you're going to tell me that it's not necessarily doing it in 1 that you could do in 2.
So the reason I think it's gotten shorter is the same reason is like less people want to do it. They
So
definitely don't want to do it
for
where
2
it's going to
years.
take too long. And so you're talking about accelerated programs where it's like you're learning about history that's already happened, right? And you can probably do a lot of that in your own pace time, right?
Or what does this have to do with my field of
Right.
study?
Right.
Like, do you have to look
it's
U.S.
just a
history
core
when you go?
class, yeah,
Yes.
that you have to check a box. The stuff we're supposed to be learning in that time period is stuff that like drug administration, what drugs go with what rhythms, if the person's in this, what kind of life, like you're, like it sounds dramatic, but
No.
you're literally saving lives.
You're doing modern chemistry.
Right. You're doing what an ER doctor does in the back of an ambulance. But then also on top of that, dealing with all the other weird shit you find on scene that like the doctor will never know about because he's in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
So,
Meaning lack of stress.
right. Or lack of like somebody else screaming at you, or you have like a family member that's trying to fight you while you're trying to do CPR, or like there's so many scenarios that like summing up what you're going to do in the back of that ambulance and trying to get it shorter and shorter, I think does become detrimental to everybody. Because it, like I said, it's not just like checking box. Like everything you're learning in paramedic school, some of the beginning is repetitive because you went through EMT school, but these are also skills that like you don't use it, you lose it. So if you have somebody coming in that's not actively working as an EMT, they need that refresher.
Have you ever heard the term complexity is derivative of variables? So the more like everything you do in life can be very simple. Like everything, every act can be deduced to like one simple entry output. But then the complexity comes with it, the variables. So like you could say to yourself, I have to do open heart surgery. Dilute that down to like it's one thing. The initial incision is pretty simple. Scalpel, skin, perfect pressure, right? But then you add variables to that, like, well, what are we doing? I would equate that to your line of work is like, in isolation, these things might seem simple or might seem not so complex. But then when you start to add the layers of variables to it, the social, there could be other people in the vicinity that aren't necessarily helpful.
Yes.
There could be the stress of timing. There is something that happened that requires immediate versus perhaps passive resuscitation or what have you. So like your job has an extreme delta of any call could be as simple as someone had a 911 call and there has to be a fire crew there with the ambulance, to as expansive as holy shit, boys.
Right.
The orphanage is on fire.
Or you don't know what you're showing up to at all.
Does that happen?
Well, you got to think it's have you ever heard of like the telephone game?
No.
Okay, so they show us this in the fire academy. Actually, I think most people should know about this because it works with like talks about rumors pretty much. So if you set 5 people in a room, and I start out and I say a story like, dude, Ariane went out the other night. He got crazy. He took off his pants. He ran around the bar, and
Normal Friday night.
he ended up in jail. And then you tell that to a person, they actually have you tell like 5 or 6 people and just pass the same note on. It's never the same by the end.
Because the nuance is lost.
Yes. So you got to think somebody's calling 911 that's freaking out. They're calling dispatch. Dispatch is dispatching the appropriate truck. Well, there's several dispatches, different kinds of dispatches in St. Louis. It's not like one big system. There's actually multiple systems. So what you're getting out of somebody freaking out and then what gets relayed, you know, you never really know. Yeah.
Not to mention the person who's freaking out in the moment could also be like, yo, shit is happening. I'm freaking out.
Right. Or like their perspective of it, like, hey, my husband's blood sugar is low. I think he might be passed out. And then you get there and he's actually in cardiac arrest. You know, like
much worse than it actually is.
Yeah. So it's weird because it's a person's perspective, what they're taking in, then it's relayed, and and you never know.
You and Jimmy are both firefighters,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Did you meet each other through firefighting?
We met each other through Abbott, which is the private ambulance. We both started out in private ambulance.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we met there. I was actually not there for long. He kind of stalked me a little bit. No,
you played what we gentlemen call the long game.
Yeah, no, I had a boyfriend when he first tried to talk to me, and then
just because there's a goalie doesn't mean you can't score.
Well, I blew him off. He said, and then like he found out me and my boyfriend broke up, and I guess he like got in there.
Jimmy's playing chess. We're playing checkers.
He did a good job. He did. Like persistence Jimmy. Pays off.
Well, consistency is key in all aspects of life.
There you go.
God bless. Why did you choose firefighting out of all the professions that you could have done? I mean, you grew up in Perryville, Missouri.
Perryville.
Which is funny because my brother's girlfriend actually grew up in Perryville. Do you know
Everybody
Carissa
knows
Willard?
Somebody from Perryville. Who?
Carissa Willard.
Well, I know Willards. I don't know if I know Carissa.
Yeah. Small world.
What is that her married name?
She's not married.
Okay. All right.
Girlfriend.
I'll have to Facebook stalk her later.
Anyway, but you might know each other. Yeah, Perryville, Missouri. Small world.
Yeah.
But what was it that made you choose? Kelly, you're an onion. You have layers. So like, and 3 hours doesn't do you justice, right? Thanks. So maybe we have you on for a second episode, which I've said to many guests now. But you know, you could have chosen any other aspect of life, firefighting, first responding. Like, why not be a cop? Why choose firefighting? Why not be anything else in this world? What was it about firefighting that kind of led you down to this path of work?
Okay, so funny thing, you were voted biggest flirt in high school. I was voted
most likely to save people in a burning building.
No, I was voted most likely to join the military.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I was gonna do. I started going around and talking to recruiters in
high school.
Yeah, and at that time, women would have never been on the front line.
But why though? Like even when you were little?
I don't know. I was a tomboy.
Okay.
I hunted, I fished. I was always out at mud runs. I don't know if you know what that is. I've talked about this stuff at the firehouse.
I'm an uncultured swine.
They're like, a what? I'm like, you take a bunch of trucks out into a muddy area and you make a mess. And like, sometimes people get hurt, and sometimes they don't. Like, it's a good time.
It's a lot of fun.
It's risky, it's fun. So like, I was always out doing stuff like that. So I was considered a tomboy. So I was always interested in that stuff, always interested in guns, being outside. And I do think it attracts like a certain, like those people most of the time. But like, I liked the challenge. Like, military just really attracted me. I wanted to travel. I wanted to get out of Perryville. I wanted the challenge. And I started going around and talking to recruiters. And most of the recruiters were fortunate that they were up front and was like, you won't ever be on like a front line. Like, they don't let women on the front line. You'll probably be in like a medical tent or, and I'm like, fuck, I'm not gonna sign up to, yeah, I'm not gonna sign up to be a fucking photographer or a nurse.
You wanted to be in the shit?
Yeah. Like, I want to be in there. So the next option was.
That's so fucking savage.
Well, if you're gonna do it, I want to like.
Girl, I'm with you.
All right.
You got me. No disagreement.
They're like, no. I was like, okay, well, this isn't the path. So my next option was actually going to be police. And I did a semester of criminal law.
Okay.
And I actually started taking classes. I did the Highway Patrol Cadet Academy, which is just like a mini version of the Highway Patrol academy to let you know what it would be like.
Yeah.
And they were actually like pretty hardcore in there. We started out with like 30 some of us. I think it was like a 2-week thing. I mean, waking you up at 2 a.m., people were fucking running in their underwear. Your rooms had to be perfect and lined up, like pretty much very militant. And if not, they destroyed your fucking room. I mean, they were hardcore. Like, people left. I think we only graduated with like 18 in 2 weeks. Like, that many people left.
How many people went in?
30 something.
So you're talking about roughly like a 50% graduation rate.
Yes. So.
It's the same as any university.
But 2 weeks. It's fucking 2 weeks, you know? And they did.
I think if they probably hyperdo it to get out the people that they know aren't going to be in it anyway.
Yeah, which was perfect. They probably don't do that anymore. But like at that time, like that's
weed out the ones that don't require the time.
Right. Like if you can't do this, then I saved you time.
Yeah. Same as any high school sport, by the way.
Yeah. But I loved those atmospheres, and like I actually became first female commander of a class, and I got second in PT. And got to come up back the next year and like help command the next class. I ain't gonna lie, I was fucking mean about it. Like, you couldn't have food in your room. One kid showed up, we searched their rooms and we found chips in his room. So I made everybody get in a halfway up push-up position while he went around and stuck a chip in each one of their mouths.
I speak for all men. I speak for all men when I go, this bitch.
Right, I was her. Like, I would have done fine in military and police. I would have loved it. But so they let me down kind of soft. They are like, hey, they're looking at letting up the height requirement.
Height requirement?
I
can't be a cop.
State Patrol used to have a height requirement.
What was the height requirement?
Like 5 inches taller than me.
I made it. I can be a cop.
So
they didn't tell you that before you went in for it?
But they were working on it. Shortly after that, it got lifted. It was like
a requirement now.
Yeah, I don't think there is one.
That makes
I don't think
sense.
there is one at all.
You got a fucking belt with a lot of lethal weapons
do you know,
on you.
Like, I talked to Barb not too long about it. Do you know Barb Burns? She trains at St. Charles. She's a state trooper, but she's like, she's really
Forgive me,
tall.
Barb.
Like,
Sure, you're a great woman.
Super fit. Looks amazing. But she's pretty tall. She's a state trooper. But we talked about that, and I was like, dude, I'd probably be working with you. They didn't have a fucking height requirement.
So the reason you got into firefighting was because of that initial late...
So all that happened, and I was kind of like, well, I guess I'll just like wait it out to see what happens with that, or maybe work as a local police.
Girl, you better start putting some tissues in your heels.
Right. So I'm like, I guess I'll just wait it out and see like if it happens or what. And I had a buddy in town that's like, why don't you come up to the fire station and just see if you like it? And sure as shit, I came up there to hang out, and it was like a great group of guys at the time, and like very supportive, and ran a couple calls, and I was like, fuck, dude, I think this is it. Yeah. And what...
So it was an immediate response. You were like, yo.
Yeah, like this is what I was looking for. I liked a little bit more structure, I think, than what the firehouse brought. Like, it can be very laid back. But I liked that everybody was there for like the same reason, the same cause, behind the same thing, kind of. And like, we've joked, like, what's the best thing than sitting around somewhere waiting for something to happen, hanging out with your friends, and then you go do dangerous shit together and come back and talk about it. Like, It's the best job in the world, really. It was, we'll talk about, maybe a second episode will be like female getting into the fire service.
Let's talk about it right now.
That's a whole story in itself.
Yeah, but let's talk about it.
I mean, like...
Well, because there's a duality to you. You're in a hyper-masculine world, but there's a feminine quality to you.
Yeah.
By the way, I also want to ask you a plethora of questions right now, because I know that you want to start a family. So, like, how do you, Kelly D'Angelo, manage this masculine exterior with this feminine need for... I mean, you want to get pregnant. You want to have a family. Yeah. You want to have all these things. So it's like you are, in a lot of ways, like, juggling, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do I do all of this simultaneously? I'm sure it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
So I don't want to shy away from this conversation. Like, I want to talk about it.
Okay.
You're a woman under 5'5", which apparently was.
Yes.
But you're physically fit. You're capable to do immense physical activities. there were precursors at the time for law enforcement that inhibited you from getting in, which
Yeah.
funny because I think you and Ashley are the same height.
He worked local police though, not highway patrol.
Okay, so
Highway
fair.
patrol is the only one that had that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You go into this fire academy for a short amount of time, realize like, oh my god, this is like much more my vibe.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about that transition, and let's talk about it as a female. I want to go into it.
So my hometown was actually very welcoming, and if they weren't,
Did you work originally in
I
Perryville?
was a volunteer at
Okay.
Perryville, but I was up at the station all the time. And they were very supportive. Like, and some of it could be like small towns. Everybody knows each other, so everybody knows each other's families. Everybody knows what kind of history you come from, who you are, what kind of person you are. And I had some like really cool guys. I actually have guys that's like pretty much throughout my whole career have reached out like, hey, I heard you got hired here. I heard you're an instructor now, or I heard this, like, fucking awesome, and like
Nice.
super proud. If I wouldn't have had that start, my next job probably would have knocked me out of it, honestly.
Really?
So like there's not a whole lot of full-time opportunity down south. Like Cape Girardeau, not many people there's not a lot of movement down there.
It's a lot less
They
people.
retire or they die.
Yeah.
Like, so there wasn't very many openings, and that was the first place I tried that I actually had a struggle with the physical agility test. Like I got an eye-opening experience. Like you're dragging a mannequin that's 175.
And you're all of 120.
Yes. And at that time I got into running, but I wasn't like strength training and stuff. I didn't have a guide to do any of that. Like I didn't know where I needed to be.
You were in
with that.
shape, but maybe the strength and conditioning
Yes,
could have a little bit of work.
My body wasn't conditioned for that. And so like that was an eye-opening experience, and
When you say eye-opening experience, could you not lift it? Could you lift it? Like, what are we talking about?
I finished it, but not in the time.
Got
I was
you.
like 2 minutes short or something like that. And I just finished it out of pure stubbornness, I think. but like, I knew my performance was not at all where I wanted it to be.
But that obviously didn't deter you.
Oh, no. I was like, I'm going to make this thing my bitch. Which is also why I'm one of the instructors of the academy now. Like, I want girls to feel that. But so it opened my eyes and where I needed to go with things. And I decided to move to St. Louis on top of getting stalked by a aggressive
Previous lover.
ex-boyfriend. And needing to get out of town. I also wasn't going to be able to do much with it down there. So came up, started Abbott. That's where a lot of people started their careers back then, to get EMS experience.
Is Abbott a private company? Forgive me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah, and it's you're kind of just a number on the list. Like there's a lot of employees. You show up, you always get late tripped. You're there longer than you're supposed to be, and they don't.
Boy, does my producer resonate.
Nobody cares as long as somebody fills the truck. That's the only thing they wanted. Good thing that came out of it was Jimmy, so there's that. But my first full-time fire experience was welcoming at first by a few. My badge-in ceremony, which, like, you've hung out with me. You can give me shit, I'll give you shit back. You're not going to hurt my feelings. My badge-in ceremony, one of the older guys came up, and he's like, what time is it? And I was like, oh, sorry, I don't wear a watch. And he said, well, if you'd stay in front of the fucking oven where you belong, you know what time it was. I was like, good one? And he wasn't joking. Like, that wasn't like a, ha, gotcha, you know? So I was like,
Wow.
all right, cool.
What year is this?
This is our start.
By the way, fuck you.
You can't do that,
That's
though.
the badge-in ceremonies. Do
Well,
that day one.
No, dude, we'll get into that.
Fuck you.
So, yeah, it was, let me think.
So at the ceremony, he's saying this shit?
Yeah, like
I'm all for hazing.
this is like,
That's fucked
you're
up.
a new hire. But see, also, this was like a smaller department. There was wives that weren't happy about a female getting hired, so they already came up and complained. Didn't want their husbands to work with a
Oh
woman.
my God.
Then on top of that, like,
Imagine getting mad at the one woman in the area
Yes.
because 20 other guys can't handle their cocks.
yeah. And I'm like, I got a comment.
By
for
the
that,
way,
too.
very disrespectful to you. What, you think I'm just gonna like be open to every man?
I've been like, no. Have you seen my husband? Why the fuck do you think I would fuck
Yes,
that
I-
up because of your
Kelly,
husband?
Kelly.
Like, for real.
Yes, I have.
Right. Most guys have a bro crush
Jimmy's
on
a
him a
very
little
handsome
bit,
individual.
right?
Sensitive yet soft.
Yes.
Hard.
Right.
Stoic.
So I'm like, you think I
Let me
would
know if
fuck
there's
that
any.
up?
Let me know if there's ever trouble in the relationship.
You're not you got to get in line. There's multiple guys in line. Multiple.
None of that shocks me. That's so fucking
Yeah.
insane.
So that came about.
This is the part where the podcast starts to get a little unhinged. Like,
Right.
dude, are you fucking kidding me?
And now you got me drinking whiskey, so it's probably
Go fuck
really,
that guy.
So, introduction to the place.
By the way, thank you for your service.
Hey,
Go
right,
fuck yourself.
Right. Welcome. Had already heard from the secretary that wives that came up and was like, if you hire a female, my husband's not working here. And also there was like multiple.
What does that say about their relationship? Can I be honest?
Right.
What does that say about their
No,
relationship?
well,
if they're in the
firefighters
vicinity of a woman,
firefighters have a very high divorce rate, which that's a whole.
who's
weird
the initiator
thing.
of?
Like, who knows? But I do.
No,
think,
there's got to be someone who initiates the divorce.
Yeah. I do think there's a disconnect, though, because of what you experience in the fire service, and maybe people don't always share it with their spouse to save them, maybe. So there ends up being a disconnect.
When you get married to someone, when you decide, I do, you know what you're signing up for.
Right.
You know what you're signing up for. My wife knows what she signed up for. God bless.
So that was the start. And then they were also a volunteer department previous, and they had just went full-time. And this is like old school, like they still have pornos in the firehouse. There's liquor down in the cabinets. They used to have you could still
We're
drive the
missing that
fire
in the
truck.
studio. We got the alcohol. We don't
Yeah.
got the pornos.
A lot of the older departments, you could still drive the fire truck as long as you blew under this. Like if you were yeah.
Oh,
No, that.
whew.
Yeah.
Context.
As in alcohol content.
You could drink on the job?
Well, volunteer departments, people would come from events.
Yeah. they'd be
So they were kind of like, if you weren't fucked
yo,
up
I was
enough,
out with my buddies.
Right.
You called me.
but you need a driver, so here I am. And they're like, well, if you can blow under, you're fine. So
I don't know how I feel about that. I actually
Yeah.
don't disagree with it.
I mean,
If we're
your
asking
house
you to come
burns-
in at any
your house
time,
burns or somebody shows up from a wedding,
be honest with you, if I'm in a burning building and some guys had 2 fireballs before, I'd be like, fuck yeah, brother, come on in.
It might even make him better fire.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Suddenly that inhibition for
There's
like
something
fear.
about that liquid courage,
Yes.
right?
Motherfuckers breaking down doors he shouldn't. I'm here to help. Thank you.
Well, so there's some old timey stuff that was still stuck in play, and which I appreciated because I came from a volunteer department, in Perryville, Missouri.
Can you tell me what the difference between volunteer department and I'm not understanding because you keep saying volunteer department. I don't know what that means.
So volunteer there's full volunteer and there's half and half, and then there's full time.
Okay.
So volunteer is like you carry a pager, and no matter what the fuck you're doing,
You just aged yourself.
a fire.
You have a cell phone
Yes,
with an
I have
app.
a pager.
You have a cell
I
phone
have
with
a
an
pager.
app.
You have to understand though, Perryville itself is also behind.
Very
so,
fair, very fair.
Like when me and Jimmy started dating, I didn't have text messaging.
After 9 p.m. on weekdays and weekends were free.
Right. Or when you had to pay for every single one of them. I wasn't
This was
paying 10
before my
cents for every
time, girl.
text.
This was before my
I
time.
told you I'm old.
You graduated 05? I graduated
Yes.
11, just so you know.
Yes, I'm telling you I'm old.
Close, but in terms of technology,
Right.
vast.
Right. There was a pretty good leap
The
in there.
first iPhone came out when I was a freshman in high school.
I didn't even have a phone until I was 19.
Bitch.
Right. So, and that was those were good times. You couldn't be tracked or anything. But, okay, so back to.
Difference between volunteer, half and half.
So, volunteers.
Full blown
you
on
wear
firefighter.
A pager. Now they probably have apps for your phone for you to respond. But a fire goes out. Everybody gets to the firehouse as fast as they can, and you respond to wherever the fire is. Half and half.
In your own vehicle?
Well, you drive. Well, sometimes. So,
Because I'm trying to understand
if you
the
were
logistics.
close enough to the firehouse, you were one of the drivers, you had to get there to drive the fire truck.
Okay.
While you were getting the truck ready, people fucking piled in, cool. Sometimes you would drive the fire truck to the fire and people would just get to the fire and then work off the fire truck. Depending on where the fire was, how far out of town it was, who got to the firehouse first.
Can no firefighter drive the fire truck, what is the need for volunteer? I'm trying to understand like the logistics of firefighting. I was under the assumption before this conversation that you either were a firefighter or you were not. You either were a police officer or you were not. The only branch of military that I know that is kind of quote unquote volunteer is the National Guard, right? So like I always thought it was like black or white. You either were or you're not. But you're introducing to me tiers.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand how logistically that works because when I think of my house is on fire or I need a cop, I make the phone call 911. I'm getting first responders. I'm not necessarily getting some guy at Helen Fitzgerald who's downing a shot who's like, oh, fuck, I got to drive this fire truck. That sounds kind of insane to me.
So volunteers, there's not as many departments.
Forgive me. This is also supply and demand, duly noted.
Yes. Mostly it's going to be very rural areas.
Got you. Which you were in at the time.
I was in at the time. And it's more of like a funding issue most of the time. Like Warrenton, I think, is still like a half and half department. They can't get funding, and most of the stuff that they try to get passed doesn't pass for some reason. So
in terms of funding for the first responders.
Yes. So it all depends on
democracy.
Right. It all depends on funding, how far out they are, like them being able to be like, this would be the most viable thing. What their call volume is to compare to like what it'd be to pay somebody to be there all the time or just show up as a volunteer.
It's an efficiency progress.
Yes. And also a political process when it comes to getting a city to be like...
If they would have gotten the funding, then there wouldn't be need for this.
Yes.
This is like a means to an end.
Yes.
Understood.
So volunteer, you wear a pager, you know you're on call pretty much all the time. And there's obviously the guys that there's state certifications for pretty much everything in the fire service. There's driver operator certification, there's ropes tech certification. You would hope most of those guys would have had that. Sometimes there's just a truck driver on the side, so they already know how to drive something like a fire truck in a volunteer department.
I'm okay with that if they're just driving.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're also pumping the water and like getting all that stuff to work. So, but honestly, some of the best skills I learned were at volunteer level because it's sink or swim, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not somebody there looking over you or micromanaging you. You have to make it happen. And it's you and a bunch of people that don't do this all the time making it happen.
And I'm sure the stress imprints it into your mind.
Yes.
There's nothing like on-the-job learning.
Right. So that's volunteer. There are places that are half and half where the chiefs are paid and then like a couple other officers and then most of the under seniority is volunteer. And then there's full-time, which everybody that's on staff is paid. So that's the difference. Volunteers fading out, luckily, but I also... Volunteer used to be kind of a stepping stone into it.
Entry level.
Now you don't have to do that. Now there's so many places that need people that you can pretty much...
But is that good or bad?
I'm old school, so I think you should volunteer before you get in.
Kelly, you keep saying you're old school, but you're not that old. You're not that school. You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about here? You're 38. You're not 55. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is a real-time transition in our lifetime, in our... I don't want to say youth, but in our, I don't want to say middle ages either, because we're not middle-aged. I don't know. The in-between, right? Yeah. It's a very cognizant thing that I'm seeing in my own industries, completely separate from yours. The erosion of entry level, but the expansion of skilled.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you guys not understand that? I'll give you an example. I work in automation more specifically than anything else. So... what is the easiest thing to automate? The entry-level positions, because they offer the least amount of variables. But without those entry-level positions, which I myself started at, I was a simple data analyst. Like, the shit that I was doing and getting paid for hourly, I automate now with ease. But if you don't have that position, if Ariane never got that entry-level data analyst position, he never becomes the person who can then automate those tasks.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page where I agree that there are transitioning times. However, do you think that we need to now insert a sense of inefficiency in order to keep quality.
Yes. Because honestly, as a volunteer, it's volunteer. There's some places that'll pay you per call. It's like a couple dollars, but you're literally doing the job for free.
It's crazy.
So if you're willing to do that job for free,
those are the people you want to hire.
those are the people that you want that you want to pay to do it.
They're doing it for the right cause.
Right. So I do think expectation has went down a lot, and then also the like earning your way into it has went down a lot. Like earning to be there. Like I earned my place in this because I did my time here to know that this was my job and like what I wanted to do. Because
do you think that's a bias based on your own anecdotal evidence though? Because you're a smaller woman in a bigger male dominated world, do you feel like you had to do a little extra to get to where you're at so you hold that same standard for everybody else?
No. I think I learned early on I had to do more no matter what. Because I'm going to be doubted a little easier, right? If I show up, like I still get it now. My partner is actually like 6'7" on the ambulance right now. And it's funny because he wasn't an athlete and he's not like, I give him shit all the time because he's not like, he's like one of the best partners I've ever had. And we like have so much fun together, but he's not like big, like manly man, you know? And people will be like, oh, you're so big, man. You must have played football. And he's like, no. Like, he didn't do any of that kind of stuff. And I was like, you know, the competitive sport and stuff like that. But we have people who we show up and they're like, I needed 2 big men to pick me up. And I'm like, well, you get a small chick and a big dude. I don't know what to tell you. So like it's
for a woman never wants to pick me up.
Right. I'm like, I've been doing this for 20 years and I still get to hear it weekly of how small I am, right? So like I'm
Does
sure
it
there's
affect
been you? There's like I'm sure it's more of when I'm tired. I'm like, you know, it's a different person every time. I get that, but like you do get tired of having to prove yourself over and over and over and over again.
20 years
especially
in.
20 years of it, you know. In the beginning I knew from day one it was going to be harder or just like more of proving myself. But this isn't like a job that I think proving yourself should be like the extra mile. I think that's because you're walking into somebody's bad day every day.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have experience of being able to handle that, you're gonna make their day worse, right? And like we get better. First responders get better. I'm guilty of it. Like you get enough people shit on you. At one point, you're like, listen, you want help or not? Like, but you have to be the good person all the time. You always have to be the good person. You get spit on. Like, I've had a person throw shit at me. Like, literally reach back, grab shit.
As a firefighter?
Yeah, you're a medical professional. These are EMS calls. Yeah.
I'm so confused.
You show up to medical calls as a firefighter.
Yeah, but imagine like you're I'm trying to think from the civilian perspective. I was the one who made the 911 call.
Yeah.
There is an individual in front of me who's willing to help me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw...
Yeah.
You want to know what I say whenever I call 911? I've only done it 2 times in my life. Thank you. Thanks, guys. What do you need? What do you want? Like, how can I make your job easier? Because you guys drove wherever the fuck you were, came and picked me up. Thank you.
That is not the majority of the
That's so wild to me.
Unfortunately. Now, we do have the public, like, that is thankful. I mean, that's why a lot of firefighters get fed, I think. We get cookies, we get brownies, we get cakes, we get, like, people drop shit off, right? I'm like, where's the carrots, guys? Like, think about what you're doing. But, like, they do. Like, there are the respectful ones that
Where's the veggie tray?
Right. Like, drop a veggie tray so I can eat something. But, no, but I think most of society have no idea how much responders get walked on. So, it's unfortunate people are homeless, right? They also homeless people use 911 as a taxi.
Wait, hold up. What do you mean?
So, you're homeless. You're in Creve Coeur, and you need drugs. Well, you got to get downtown to get them, right?
So you fake
So
an
you call
emergency
911
to
and
get
you
the
have chest
ambulance.
pain and you say the only hospital you can go to is Barnes downtown.
And you guys can't like,
We can't say no.
yeah.
And we can't.
Why can't you say no? Is it the oath? No, that's a doctor. The Hippocratical oath.
No,
is
there's like a whole thing
doctors.
behind it, but pretty much
Liability.
Like, yeah. I mean, I can lose
Every
my medic
phone
license.
call that comes in needs to be taken seriously.
Yes, yes.
That's insane.
So even if you know, and it's usually like the same people. Like they do it all the time, so you know what they're
Have you
doing.
gone to certain places and seen the same person and thought,
Yes, we get names for them. Like working at a private ambulance, there was One-Eyed Willie. Anybody that works at Abbott knew One-Eyed Willie.
every man's got one in his pants?
That's what we called in. He had one eye, and when it got cold outside, he just hospital hopped. He would go from hospital to hospital, get a sandwich and a bed for the night. Like, we had nicknames for them.
I don't know if I can blame him.
Right. But at the same time, at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you get that call and you've been running all day, and One-Eyed Willie wants to go to the hospital because he's cold, and he decided now's the best time to go. Like,
It's infuriating.
dude, right? Yeah. Or you show up to a drug overdose where it's a young girl, and her kid's been back in the crib for who knows how long. She's been passed out in the front, and the kid's covered in piss and shit. And you can't scream at it. She motherfucks you for messing up her high when you bring her out of it.
This is why I can't do what you guys do. This is why you.
But like that's why we get like it sucks because people will say you know what you're signing up for, but you don't. And taking away volunteering definitely takes away some of that. You know,
I think society would also start to benefit from like some credentialed curtailing, meaning you go to a scene, you see One-Eyed Willie, you go fuck yourself.
Right.
You done how many 5 this week? Go fuck yourself, Willie.
But on top of that, there's a whole different generation coming.
Am I an asshole for saying that though?
No,
I'm
but
curious.
No, like that's what you want to say, but you can't.
Why not? Because the laws.
Yes.
This is
And
where,
we're a public service. Like we're on taxpayer money.
Understood. But at what point do we as like a society start to say that like our tools and our services are being mismanaged, are being misused?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, so my political leanings are more socially liberal, conservatively, fiscally conservative, right? And in that endeavor, I'm very like laissez-faire in a lot of things, but then very nuanced and certain. One of the things that I'm very much the case of like I trust the person in charge is shit that I'm using that I have no fucking clue. So if I call 911 and I'm like, there's an intruder in the home, I'm expected that if I say there's an intruder in the home or trying to break in or whatever, the people that deal with that every day can kind of deduce the seriousness of the situation. Maybe I'm erroneous because I don't deal with this every day. Maybe this intruder is not actually an intruder. Maybe it's someone trying to find a bed for the night. Maybe it's a violent individual, what have you. Similar to first responders and firefighting. There could be a fire in my kitchen that I could easily put out myself, but I decided to call 911, exacerbate the situation, what have you. Or it's like this monumental undertaking that there's no way that I can handle myself. Now I need the resources. Don't you think the next logical step is for these entities that exist to respond, to start taking some ownership? And not in the sense of what they choose to and not to do, but once they get to a situation, how they choose to respond to it. Meaning, you respond to every call that you get, regardless if it's a medical, if it's a fire, if it's One-Eyed Willie. But then once you get to the scene, I think if you asked voters, would you want your tax dollars to be spent on One-Eyed Willie getting sent to Barnes Jewish so he can get whatever the fuck he needs for the night? Or would you expect for people to be like, oh, it's this guy again, let's go home? I hate to say it that way because it sounds a little bit more inhuman or insensitive, but at what point do we start to say like, okay, I don't want efficiency in the sense of automation of menial tasks for firefighting specifically, because I want a human there to deduce the difference between right and wrong. But then I want to empower that human to then deduce right and wrong, when to step in, when to curtail, when to commit, when to subside. I want that.
So here's the thing is most people can't look at things, I feel like, for over the perspective of everybody. So example, so you're looking at it as like you're taking away response to other people, right?
If One Eyed Willie calls you for bullshit and someone else 5 minutes later is calling, might not get the most logistical, the most near fire department, because One Eyed Willie is taking that truck because of when he called, and now maybe these people that might necessarily need this assistance. No, I don't want to say assistance. This service more, not efficiently, more urgently, now might have to wait an extra few minutes because they're driving from a little farther distance. And for first responders, anybody in fighting, anybody in any certain circumstance where it's like high pressure, every second matters, let alone minutes, let alone hours.
And that's happened.
That's insane.
I've been running a call that's not an emergent call and heard a cardiac arrest go out pretty close. Well, guess what? Now they have to dispatch the next closest truck, which who the fuck knows
where that is. Or
But this is the thing that tends to happen a lot. So, for example, we get used a lot too for things like we want to help our community and we want to be there, but there's people who their mom is getting older and maybe she's obese and they can't get her to and from the toilet by themselves anymore. So instead of no, I'm telling you this is actually happens a lot. Like every rotation kind of thing.
This can't be legal. Do you ever sue these people?
You can't. You
for
can't.
No. Yes, you fuck yeah.
No, it's an emergency to them.
That's insane.
And it's public service.
That's insane.
So here's the thing: this is most people's mindset is they will call us for it's called an invalid assist, and we literally go help them with something like that. Our truck's out of service for it. Our ambulance, we can try to respond as fast
because
as we
you're
can.
paid by tax
but we
dollars.
we may be mid-lift of a 350-pound woman to get her to the toilet because her family can no longer do it. And they could use our services for however long they want, even though we suggest, hey, maybe you need to have home health come in. Maybe you need to have this person go into a nursing facility because you guys can't
live
take
by
care
themselves.
Yeah. And you try to explain that. Well, to them, in that moment, that's all that matters. They're not worried about the person down the road that might be having a cardiac arrest or might be having an MI or might have fell off the roof or might... In that moment, that's what matters. And unfortunately, I do feel like a lot of society has gotten that. Like, we've gotten calls to just come check their blood pressure. They could go up to Deerbergs and check their blood pressure, but they call 911 to get a blood pressure check. Like, we have stuff like that all the time. So, like, our bitterness isn't seeing bad shit. It's not good to see bad shit. It's not good to see death. Like, I've literally seen people burn alive, like pulled up to a scene and heard screaming, and that shit follows you. But it's like your loss in humanity of knowing people that will choose them over everybody else all the time.
Even when it's not a severe interaction.
Yes.
Like if I was having a heart attack, I'm calling anybody I can regardless. But if I can't move from my bed to the bathroom, and if I may, I want to extrapolate this thought process, though, because as a society, if we move away from the micro to the macro, then social services will need to be used more and more, which then puts a pressure on social services. It used to be that, I can only speak from anecdotal evidence. The elderly in my culture, we're kind of weird because like kids grow up in the house and then they get old enough to move out and then they have their own family. And then when the elderly or their parents get to a certain age, they actually move back in with the kids.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, hey, you're too old.
That's how most communities worked. Like that was most family systems. Yeah.
That was my culture. I didn't necessarily know if it was everybody's culture, but the way I was raised was you become the kid, you go to the parent, and then eventually you become the kid again in that sense, right? But the nice thing about that was, like my father, for instance, is most likely going to live with us in the next couple of years because he's getting to that age where he's getting a little older and he wants his autonomy, fair, I don't want to strip him from that, but he's starting to rely on us more and more. And I'm fine with, I'm his son. You call me, I'll pick up and I'll answer, but you can't expect me to then like drive 30 minutes away to do. If you're under my roof, it makes things a lot easier. What I'm trying to get at is you're having two variables that are kind of spreading you even thinner. So the first variable is the inadequacies of society to prepare people for the
inevitable.
Not even the inevitable, but the precursors of life.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you might die before you ever need these services.
Maybe.
Maybe. But if you don't, then inevitable. Simultaneously, society is pushing people to a point where they might not necessarily go for this line of work. So you have both supply and demand. Demand is increasing because society is pushing it to that for the purposes of, autonomy, like financial worries. Maybe kids can't take in their parents like they used to. Like, I'm not trying to say like this is like a responsibility of the youth. I get it, dude. It's hard living today. No knock on anybody that can't house themselves and their parents. I'm not trying to do that. So that you have that variable, but then you also have the variable of like less people are going for this work, so then you have less people that are available for this work. But then because of the autonomy of individuals, you're going to need more of this work. It's like supply is diminished, demand is exacerbated. What are we expecting?
So when it comes to the elderly, even
not even elderly, extremely obese. Extremely unhealthy.
Those to me are the main problems.
Elderly and obese?
No, obesity and extremely unhealthy.
Ooh, obesity first?
Yes.
Really?
Okay, I got a good story. But before that, when a grandma calls me because she fell down, she's living by herself, she's doing everything she can. You can tell, like, she fucking takes care of herself, and it was just that bad day. I'll help grandma off the floor as many times as she wants to try to stay there by herself. Like, she's trying, you know what I mean? Like, she's trying to be herself, and she earned that by making it through life. And, like, you can tell she's trying to take care of herself. And it's like us letting go of fighting, right? They're getting to a point in their life, it's hard because they have to let go of that fight at some point. They've
been autonomous their whole lives.
Yes. I understand that, and I respect that so much with the older people. Here's a story. The obesity thing, just because I know people go through shit, right? Sometimes they have medical issues, but like when you just give up and give into it, like it becomes such a selfish thing. Like the obesity, we have bariatric trucks. Do you know what that is?
No.
That is, they had to start making them because people were getting so fat that our ambulances and our loading systems for the ambulances couldn't
contain them.
Couldn't do it. They couldn't load them. We have ambulances that have a winch in the back of the truck with ramps that come out and a bigger stretcher because these people wouldn't fit on these
regular
stretchers,
ambulances.
And the loading system arms couldn't even lift the patients. So we had to make ramps and a winch attached into the back of the ambulance cab and literally winch them into the ambulance. And it's when people like give up and decide that they're the priority because we had a guy that called us at, it was like midnight or 1 o'clock, extremely obese. And I mean, who knows? Maybe he had a hard life. Maybe he had some medical issues, but he called 911.
Kelly.
I know. I try to give benefit of the doubt or I get real bitter. Okay. So he's in a wheelchair because he's
if you're slightly over the BMI, one thing. You chose a sedentary lifestyle.
You can be as fat as you want, just don't abuse the system.
No, if you choose to be fat as fat as you want, I'm all for live and let live.
Yeah.
But then don't fucking change ambulances. Don't ask for like 2 seats on an airplane.
Right.
Don't ask for industries to change to you.
Yes.
If you want to be fat fuck, Be a fat fuck.
But
Be a fat fuck.
But don't make us.
But then don't
adjust
change the
everything.
world
Yes.
around you because you decided you couldn't put the fucking hoagie down. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm sorry. No, you know what? I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry.
No, I feel the same way. So
This is the fattest I've ever been in my life. And I've never felt that it obscured my reality because I never let it get to the point where it was like truly unhealthy.
Yeah, I was bigger in high school. And to know what it feels like to be like that and then what it feels like to be healthy and be fit. I don't know how people just let go of everything and just give up. I have, like, if you can't fight for yourself, I just don't understand.
Don't expect everybody to...
Why does everybody else have to fight? So wait, you're going to love this story then. We get a call. It's like midnight or 1 o'clock. And it was for an invalid assist, which I kind of explained what that was. Like, people can fall down, can't get up. We have to come help them kind of thing.
Fair, by the way. Fair. That's
okay.
a need.
Yeah. Because, like I said, older people and stuff.
Yeah. Shit breaks.
I had a lady that had fucking one leg and was living by herself and, like, got in a weird position. I'm like, touche. Like, you...
I know a dude who broke his hip going down 3 stairs.
Yeah. I mean, like...
Do you need a...
No.
Okay, sorry.
It was an alarm for something that I don't remember what I set it for. Yeah, so we get there. It's an obese man. Had an electric wheelchair because he's obese and can't get around. He had ordered pizza and had it delivered. And about 20 foot from the door, his chair gave out. So with the right motivation, he got out of his chair and got to the door and got his pizza and closed the door and sat down on the floor and ate his pizza.
He couldn't get up.
And then called 911 because he couldn't get back up to get in his wheelchair. So as I'm telling you, like, people that meet bitter first responders, it's not the, like... They're not like, it's not like because we see all this trauma.
What do you say when you get there? Do you ever tell these people, like, hey, man?
No, that's my struggle is, like, I've been in this.
Can you? Can you even say anything?
No. Like,
that's fucked up. That's fucked up.
You can't. And, like,
that's ridiculous. That's a misuse of public services.
Yeah.
That's a misuse.
Yeah. But he pays taxes and he's a customer.
Yeah,
so
but.
You have to just you have to suck it all.
You're only making me more and more conservative. You're only making me more and more that we shouldn't have social... Because if you had to pay for every time, here's the problem, right? Because this is where my head goes. If people had to start paying for every time they picked up that phone, maybe they start picking up that phone a little less. So then you start getting the efficiency of capitalism. But I don't want that because I want, if someone is broke and has no fucking money, is one-eyed Willie for the first time, and needs to be taken to a hospital, I want there to be a public service. But then you get the motherfuckers that misuse this public service. Then you create motherfuckers like me who are like, well, you don't fucking need it. Then I'm the bad guy.
Yep. So that's like people,
you're a better person than I.
People see bitter frustration. And we have that internal struggle. Like, there's years, people have bad years at work, and, like, it adds up. But it's not the stuff adding up that people think. Like, it's not... There's hard calls. Like, we see a lot of shit I don't think the human mind should ever have to process.
As a first responder, I can only assume.
Yeah. So, like, you know, and it comes back up. Like, I was always the person who's like, PTSD is, like, dramatic, right? Like, but I actually experienced some symptoms of it for a year that I didn't know what was going on until I realized somebody close to me was going through it. And I was like,
what?
like, you get depressed, you get
sleep?
less social, you don't sleep, you actually have some flashbacks. There's a lot of things
because
that trigger.
Of things that you have seen through your line of work.
Yeah. And that, like, maybe you have regrets in the moment of, like, did I do everything I could? Because it's like there's so many things with firefighting that actually relate to fighting. Like, every fight you've ever had, you've probably went back and said, shit, I could have done this different. I didn't go in with the right mind. Or if I would have just moved like this instead of like this, it would have went differently. And you, sometimes on the bad calls, you run those calls like a fight. And it's just like a fight too. Like, you can plan for game plan. That's all of our SOGs and our guidelines that we go by. And, like, you have a textbook that tells you if this person's having this problem, this is how you respond. But it's just like a fight. They're not always going to respond like that. Or in the middle of it, they throw up some shit. You're like, what the fuck is this, right? Same thing happens on a call. You know, you get there and you're like, well, it's a basic cardiac arrest, right? Well, actually, she's pregnant. So it's not a regular cardiac arrest. So there's...
Oh, shit.
Right. So there's always, like, those... You replay it, just like you replay your fights. You replay those calls in your head for a long time that, like, until you accept it. And sometimes I feel like we don't even accept some fights.
Well, do you replay the calls that went bad, not necessarily the ones that go good?
Yes.
Because that's what I think we do as fighters as well. We always hyper-focus on the losses or the calls that went bad, but how many of them go good that you don't give a second thought to because...
But you don't think about that because most of the people I think that get in this field are just like fighters. You're, like, hypercritical of yourself.
Yeah. And hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
With, I should have done this, I should have done that, because you understand how everything planned out. But that's also it's I don't want to say unhealthy, but it's not fair. It's unfair to you.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, like after the fact, you're fine.
Sorry. I don't know why that's going on.
It's unfair for you after the fact to be like, oh, I could have done this, I should have done that, because you have the nuance and the variables afforded to you. I don't think, I've said this before with previous guests, and I'll say it with you as well. I'm glad you do what you do, because I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? I have an affinity, I have a skill set that just doesn't seem to be where your affinity and your skill set are, and I'm glad that people like you exist, because God bless, I couldn't fucking do it.
You would be surprised, probably what you can
I
handle.
think you would be surprised. I think you would be surprised at how many people can't do it. Because here's the thing. A lot of people, and I want to focus on what Andy Frisella said about first responders with regards to women, but not Andy Frisella. The thought behind it, okay? And that is because most people try to put themselves in these positions. Most people try to say, like, this is what I would do. But I've been in so many high pressure positions that I know what I'm capable of and what I'm not. I'm fine with causing damage to protect myself, but I'm not really fucking good at saving somebody. I'm gonna overthink every little act I do. I'm gonna try to do a cost benefit analysis on like going into this burning building. I don't think you understand. Like you try to nonchalantly pass off like, oh, Ariane, you'd be surprised at what you could do. I think you'd be surprised at how much people can't do. I think you and your people, because you're surrounded in your echo chamber, are surrounded by these people that can do it, that you start to assimilate that the rest of society can't. I think you'd be surprised. I think you'd be surprised at how feeble most of society is.
I mean, I've seen how feeble most of society can be, but I also recognize when there's people that could do the job.
You think?
Like, yes. Yeah. I think you would probably be frustrated. Like
I couldn't do it because of that.
Because
I'd get
your
fired.
problem would be
I'd get fired.
Okay, so here, like, I've actually been talked to about my face. Because my mouth doesn't
Your
say
face?
it, but my face says it.
Oh, you got it. Oh, okay. I was like, damn, dude. Like, I'm not good looking, but I think it'd be
funny because I'm like, I'm not a Botox person, but I'm like, maybe I need to just get it to fix this, like, what the fuck line right here.
Just put a mask on.
Yes, like, no, like,
the V for
COVID
Vendetta.
was my easiest time because it, like, my eyes still say a lot, but, like, without the combo, it helped me. It helped me a lot. And, like, you've known me for a long time. Like, I'm not a bullshitter. Like, I'm very honest about, like, if I don't like you, I'm going to fucking tell you. And when people abuse the system, like, I know my face has said what, like, you just can't stop it. And, like, I've had coworkers be like, listen, a customer called and said that you made a face. I'm like, well, I can't control my face. And I even joked one day with my partner of, like, and this was a patient that's bipolar and like
Kelly, that is such a precursor to the severity of the situation. Imagine you're actually calling 911 for a real fucking reason. Do you think if you're calling because it's like life or death, that the face someone fucking made would be a variable in that night? If I'm having a heart attack, I'm not being like, oh man, that girl had resting bitch face. I'm thinking, thank you. Do you think this is sustainable?
No.
That's
No.
the other thing. Because we
And
were talking earlier in the conversation about the number of people going into
Yes.
this line of work and how there's a delta between supply and demand.
The fuck? Society's getting selfish is a big thing. And like, I think majority of people are getting selfish, and they can't put majority of society above their own needs, especially in the moment. And it's going to keep going until something happens. And what's crazy is this is going to start some debate, but like COVID was the best years of my career.
Because you were...
We did not run as many calls at all. Because everybody was so scared to leave the house to get sick or go to the hospital that they didn't call for the bullshit. They didn't call for the ache in their toe or that they have a tummy ache, or because it wasn't worth the risk of going to the hospital of potentially getting COVID. So they stayed home and they took care of it.
So you would only get calls that were of need of
More
your services.
serious. Yeah. Yeah. So like COVID was actually...
Did you get less calls in general, I'm sure?
Yes.
So the number of calls went down.
Yes.
But your preparedness for the calls that you did get were up.
Yes.
So you offered a better service, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Or then when COVID started to, or not COVID, but the reaction to COVID started to demoralize and get back to like an equilibrium.
More of the calls started coming back.
Do you ever discuss these things with people in power? Politicians?
They know. It's been there forever.
This is not an isolated incident, so this is well known. Mm-hmm. Is this something ever discussed?
Yeah, but it's still a public service and a tax-paying job.
This is why.
Like, the only thing that can change it is the people. When they, like, people saying, okay, I'm sick and I have the flu. And instead of going to the hospital to have them tell me I have the flu, I need to stay home and just tough it out.
No.
Because I'm probably going to give people the flu at the hospital that I come in contact with.
Can I introduce you a different paradigm and why it won't shift or why it won't change? Insurance. The people without insurance will still call you because they don't care. They weren't going to pay it anyway. And
Yes,
you guys
no,
are going to
you're-
have to provide your services
still have to give it,
regardless. The people with insurance don't care because their insurance is going to pay for it. The problem is the detachment between the service and the person paying for it. This is why this narrow view specified to the detachment of paying for a service that you're utilizing. If you went to Subway or you bought a sandwich and you didn't have to pay for your sandwich and you could do whatever you wanted to your sandwich or your pizza or whatever, you'd be like, I want 10 toppings on that shit.
No, I
regardless
know
of
exactly
how
where you're going,
hungry
and I
you
agree.
are.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, I don't have to pay for it. I want extra cheese. I want pepperoni. I want this, that, or the other. Regardless of how hungry you actually are or what your preferences are, because you can. I think it's an abuse of a system that is in place for the right reasons, but utilized in an incorrect way. But this, at the micro, when you expand it, is a lot of the issues that we have as a nation.
Yes.
And I know that's kind of a stretch, duly noted. But I think the mentality is there across all fields. Law enforcement, where you're putting these people in highly strenuous, stress-filled situations where they have to do critical problem solving in dire consequence situations in real time. And if they get it right, no one says a word. Good job, buddy. You had a great day.
Right.
And if someone gets it wrong, well, now you're on
criticized.
every mainstream media news source as like a bad cop. I'm not saying that they're not bad cops. There's not bad firefighters. There's a spectrum of everybody in every field. But what I am saying is, how do you exacerbate the probability of failure? Add stress.
Yeah.
Add stress to any, like, bake a piece of bread or bake a bread like in the oven. Put it in the oven, 400 degrees, 30 minutes. Now if I fight somebody and if you lose the fight, the bread burns. Well, now you introduce a layer of stress to this. Extrapolate that mentality to every aspect of life, and we put this like this hyper focus or unrealistic expectation of quality on humans, on people like you, like everybody else. I fuck up. I'm sure you fuck up. The only difference is when I fuck up, I get a an email that says, Ariane, don't do it again. You get a scolding.
Yes.
Fix your face.
Yeah.
When we were talking earlier about like less people coming in, we said specifically about society, but I think that's kind of one part of that. I think the other part is the expectation. You want me to do all these things. You want me to jump through all these hoops and do all these precursors and get prepared both mentally and physically. And then, God forbid, I have a bad day.
Right.
And I show a face that I shouldn't because of one-eyed Willie. Now I'm scolded.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
But you can't do that.
I would make the argument that you guys need to start. That's how I think it starts. That's how I think change happens. Not at the isolated. I'm not saying
you definitely have to get to a certain level.
Explain that to me.
To be able to make any change.
In terms of hierarchy?
Yeah.
So like, but you're 20 years in. How fucking long do you have to be in there?
So here's my problem is
I've never worked at a place longer than 4 years.
So I haven't worked at a department for 20 years.
Okay. Forgive me. Sorry.
So we'll rewind for a second,
Yes,
going
please.
back to getting into the field, because that'll lead into it a little
Please
easier. Of course, my first department, bad experience. And just to kind of sum it up, throw a few things out there. Badge and ceremony was shit, right?
By the way, fuck that guy.
Well, it gets even better. There's a couple good guys there, but most of the people there weren't like super focused on the department because they were coming from volunteer to now we're full time and we got to make the switch over. So name a few things. I got my food fucked with. A lot of times I checked all 6 trucks in the morning by myself while the guys played like Mario Kart. And then I usually wasn't invited to family dinners. Like the wives would leave me out of food on purpose. And then I left my bath towel out while I went on my 4-day before, and like I came back and there was shit on it. So somebody literally wiped their ass with my bath towel.
That seems like much more of a... That seems like much more of an issue with men and their immediate surroundings and the precursors of this endeavor than it does about like the... Forgive me. What I was getting at was more like the macro. This like overuse of this field, right? And how it could kind of create this separation from the supply of labor to the demand, which is ever growing.
Yeah.
You're introducing a separate topic to this.
Well,
and
I'm
that's
saying
an internal thing.
working your way up. So
Well, did the other guys get their towels shit on?
No.
So that this is an internal thing.
Yeah.
This
So-
is, come on, boys.
So that's where all this like,
What did you say? Like, did you ever be
I
like,
couldn't.
what
I
fuck
couldn't.
that? Yeah, you can.
No, this is where it comes in. It's different.
This
It's
is why I
different
can't
for
do what you
girls.
do.
This is why it's different for girls in it too. So, unfortunately, there's some girls that's paved the way, and then there's some girls that came into the field and slept with coworkers, or couldn't do the job, and there's so few of us that the one bad experience kind of puts us all together, right? If you work with 10 guys and one's a piece of shit, you're not going to necessarily
I sleep with
focus
him
on
and I
that.
work my way to the
Right,
top.
right. But you're not going to necessarily focus on that one guy, right?
I don't care.
There's more. There's a ratio of more of what could be good or bad. There's very few females. You work with a female and she's bad, then no girl deserves to be in this field, according to some guys, because they had a bad experience, right? But you can't debate that. Like,
Yeah, you can.
I can understand it in a way.
No, you can absolutely debate that.
Yeah, but I know some of those girls came through, and being out in an apartment like that, if you coming in as a girl that came from a different area, I didn't know anybody in St. Louis. I didn't have family in the field. I didn't have somebody to back me up or be political for me or get me into the service. I had to do it myself. So if I would have said anything right away, which when I started there, I was told, we're going to make sure you don't last longer than 6 months here.
Go fuck yourself.
I was there for 3 years. I took a whole bunch of classes on my own while I was there. They fucking hid books from me so that
They said this to you?
Yeah.
In your face?
Yes.
What was your
Yes.
response? Like, okay, hi guys.
Sorry you feel that way. Like, here's the thing. If I would have immediately reported anything, I would have been the problem.
then it's a circular logic of self-fulfilling prophecies. Let me extrapolate. If every woman gets to a certain level because she sleeps her way to that level, it only becomes true because you allow for every woman that doesn't do it to not succeed by ostracizing,
Right.
by hazing, by all of these things. So you're kind of proving the counterfactual to be factual because you're making it so. You didn't do the extracurriculars to get to yourself to a certain position, but then I belittle that. Well, then what am I saying to everybody else? Your peers, for instance. So you didn't do it, but maybe there's a woman next to you that's like, well, fuck, Callie's doing it the right way and she's getting bitched at. I'm just going to sleep with this dude and I'm going to get the fucking raise. So then men are creating that avenue for the self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, dude, she slept her way to the top because the one girl or whatever girls that are trying to do it the right way, you're preventing from doing that. You're creating the only avenue, and that's through this act that you then say is not tolerable. Not to deviate too much, but that's exactly how I feel about OnlyFans. About OnlyFans models.
Yeah, that's like a whole other.
Well, the reason I bring that up is moreover than not, you have all these men consuming this product, pornography, but then ostracizing the people that are doing that.
It, yes.
It's like, hold up, brother. When certain so-and-so makes millions of dollars, who's she making that money from?
And they're getting fight offers because they have a great following. Yes.
If you want to talk about the extrapolation to entertainment, like you want to bitch at these girls for utilizing their sexuality and their promiscuity or whatever it is. But then you're the one consuming that.
Yes.
You cannot be both the shield and the sword. You're a hypocrite at that point.
Exactly.
So my whole thing is basically this. This is why I can't do what you do. Because if I'm in that environment, I'll spit out the hypocrisy. I would have gotten fired long ago. You're better than I am. You're better than I am.
Here's the thing is luckily I had Jimmy in my life already at that point.
So he's like...
I'm not going to lie, like... we shared a vehicle at that time too. We're like always been like that. We share a vehicle now, but he would drive me. That time we had to do it because we had no other choice. He would drive me to work, which was over an hour drive, and I cried almost the whole way there.
Because
for like my last year, I fucking hated it. Like I even tried to fight in Guns N' Hoses while I was there, which I came in fighting in Guns N' Hoses, and the guys would not work with me to get off, but they had the meetup bus to go to Guns N' Hoses at the fire department while I was on duty, so I could see everybody load on the bus to go to Guns N' Hoses.
Did you ever talk to them?
I talked to an officer.
Because I would no.
And I talked
sitting down with them individually,
yes,
be like, dude, why are you such a cunt?
Then you become the fucking
Fuck
problem.
that. Then be the problem.
So here's the thing.
Then be the problem.
Listen.
This is why you're better than me.
No, I had to have the long game in plan, or it would have never happened. It would have never happened. So if I would have raised any hell, because there was a few people I tried to count on there and it backfired, like to talk to them and then they just like used what I said to try
Against
to like,
you.
Yes. So like I realized pretty early on I couldn't trust anybody there, that I was going to be an outsider no matter what. At one point I did think about going into the police field again. Like I actually filled out an application for the county police department.
Because you wanted to get out of firefighting?
Yeah, because I was applying in the county, and at the time it was pretty political. Like, nobody knew me. Nobody knew anything about me. There was girls in departments that had caused problems. And it was more of a liability to some departments to hire a girl. Especially, I was small. I was a 120-pound female that they didn't know if I was capable or not.
Could you pass the test?
Fuck yeah. Not only did I get where I could pass the test, I was beating... My physical agility test to get into the fire academy, I beat the time of an NFL player. So fuck all that shit.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I got really competitive with that. Like that was never going to be a doubt in my mind after the first physical agility test I had a problem with. And so like I just didn't know the right people. So stirring up any shit would have blackballed me no matter what. So game plan.
That's got to be infuriating.
Yeah, I mean, like, there was nothing I could do. There was literally nothing I could do. Because any reach for help could have been the wrong hand to reach for, you know? And so that's where I, like, decided I wanted to make some kind of difference or change, or at least get to a point where like I could be a voice for somebody, right? So I finally had a breakthrough where my next department offered me a position. And along with that, I reached out to try to be an instructor at the St. Louis County Fire Academy, where I could be an advocate for the girls coming through. And also, like, it was crazy because a lot of the guys I'd work at the previous department didn't have the St. Louis County Fire Academy. And you have to have it to work in the county. So once I left that department, went on to my next department, started working there, you would be amazed at how many apology text messages
No shit.
I got. Or a phone call that was like, I'm so sorry. You were one of my brothers. I should have stood up for you more. And like, I'm sorry I let him treat you like that.
But how did that make you feel though? Like too little, too late? Were you appreciative of it? What was your mentality towards this change of thought from so many?
So, I think there was some people that like actually noticed after I left like what was going on. And maybe I was like, maybe it opened some eyes for like the next girl. Like I wish I could have made more changes while I was there. Like we even discussed the maternity leave while we were there. And I had a guy tell me there, we're not going to add maternity leave because we'll never have another female work here. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, there's girls that have gotten mad in the field, and I've heard them be like, I don't have my own bunk room. And I'm like, bitch, I went through so much shit, and I didn't have my own bunk. I slept in a bunk bed above another dude. I didn't even have my own square footage. Like, so it's crazy watching some people come through that, like, the complaints they have. I'm glad it's gotten way easier for girls, and I'm so glad, and I want to be part of it. And that was a point of, like, getting on at the county academy is, like, being able to be that advocate, but also, like, you learn so much about if you're a tool for somebody, how different they treat you. Or, like, you could be a stepping stone. And, like, that taught me a lot, too, is, like, also being an advocate in that area of, like, this person was kind of a shitty person to me, and I don't really think they would be great hire. So
I could not do
by
what
sucking
you
it
did.
up for the time I did. And on my exit, you get an exit interview.
But when you're sucking it up, what's the end game goal for you? Like, so you're eating all of this shit. What's going through your head? Like, Kelly, just do it because, like, listen, I like to think of the idea that you're doing it for the greater good. That is obviously the greater of that pie chart. But there's got to be, like, external variables in that as well. It can't just be, like, One-Eyed Willie needs me to take him to downtown. So, like, you have One-Eyed Willie. You're getting fucking ostracized by your coworkers. What is keeping you in this game?
How bad I wanted to do the job. And how bad I wanted to be a game changer for somebody later.
That's the problem, right? Because it's like, then you're the person who, like, you're the kind of person you want to be doing this job. Regardless, man, woman, out of the equation. Yeah. The person who's willing to overcome the extreme hurdles. That's the person you want in the gig.
Thanks.
It's not a compliment, it's reality.
Thanks.
But if you take it as one, I'm more than happy to take it.
I'll take it.
So it's like, this cannot continue. This cannot continue. And here's the other thing. I'll speak from this from a male perspective. There are a lot of things that are shifting in real time in the corporate real estate in terms of, like, HR, working with females, and all these other things. For men that are, like, not pigs, this shit is, like, easy. I wasn't going to slap you on the ass anyway, so, like, going through the HR training's nothing for me, right? Yeah. I look at it as, like, oh my God, I have to do this fucking shit again, like, every year. Okay, yes. Don't tell her she looks hot. Tell her she looks beautiful. Hey, you look beautiful today. Yeah. You know what I mean? Pretty fucking simple. Any man who, like, navigates towards women in any way, shape, or form, this is all, like, self-explanatory shit. But however, the rate at which this stuff is changing, I do sympathize very slightly with some men, because we should have never needed HR to get involved. Does that make sense? Had we as men navigated these waters accordingly, it would have been easy, smooth sailing. But because we chose as a collective gender to kind of ostracize or manipulate or make it impossible for our female coworkers to navigate these waters to the same degree that we did, well, now you have to introduce this separate variable of like, okay, well, now we're going to change the laws. Now we're going to change the corporate infrastructure. Now we're going to change this, that, or the other. It's like, it's a product of our own environment. We made it to have to be this way. So like, I think there's a lot of good that came from that. I think the speed in which it happened will cause a little bit of strife with certain men, but I can only speak for myself anecdotally. It is literally a non-fucking factor. It's literally a non-factor. And I didn't have any sisters or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just wasn't a fucking piece of shit. And I'm not trying to sound like, I have to say this, I'm not trying to sound like a white knight. I'm not. I always navigated this world with anybody with the golden rule. I always try to treat people the way I would want to be treated. Woman, man, fat, short, stupid, smart, who cares? I will treat you the way I would want to be treated.
Which some people can't do that. And then also I think some people's...
Well, then to those people you say, fuck you.
If you are at a point in your life, you can do that.
Fair.
So along
Very
with that,
fair.
like, I went to a department for 9 years, loved it there, had an amazing group of guys. Like, supportive group to where, like, it got where we were needing people to be captains to ride the seat. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. And they're like, please do it. Like,
Nice.
we want you on the seat. Anything you need, we'll support you. Was riding the seat as captain, driving the fire truck all the time. Like, that's the role I was in. We got a new chief, and shit changed, and a lot of people left, and the mentality of the whole department changed. So I started over again.
Wow.
I mean, when you go to a different department, you start at the bottom of the totem pole again, no matter how many years experience you have prior.
Why is that?
It's just how their seniority works everywhere.
That seems
Doesn't
kinda
matter.
Stupid.
It sucks, but at the same time, I'm still that earn it person. So it doesn't matter. I've 20 years.
Even when the system doesn't make sense?
Every department's mentality is different, and their logic is different. Like, coming into the system, you kind of earn like your place again. I get it. Like, and everywhere I've worked, I've had to like prove I can do the job. Like, I've understood that no matter how long I've been in the field. The place I'm at now is cool because like a lot of the guys know that I've been in the field for a long time. So even our training officers like, hey, will you put this training on? I know you're not a spring chicken and you can do this. So I came in with respect, but I still have to start at the bottom again.
Only took 20 years.
Right. So I have another 25 years before I can retire.
Is that what you want to do for your whole walk of life? What happens when, let's just say, all your plans come to fruition, you get pregnant, you and Jimmy have a family, what would be what's the avenue that you want to take if things go according to plan? Do you still want to be a firefighter forever?
I'm going to finish my career.
What does that mean?
So there's the good thing with firefighting is like, obviously fighting's rough on our bodies, right?
When you say fighting, you mean cage fighting?
Fighting, yes.
Competitive fighting, not firefighting.
So add firefighting with no sleep, and then what we do, picking up 300-pound people off the floor and everything else, literally burning the candle at both ends, right? I know that I'm going to wear down probably faster than most people in their careers, right? And I've already been doing this for a long time because I took the long road to earning my place, right? I did everything I could to prove I needed to be here, or I deserve to be here. Right.
You earned it.
And I can live with that my whole life. Like, even if it's a longer road than most people's. Because everybody that I've come across in that road and I've worked with came out of it respecting me because I earned my place and I proved I could do the job. So starting over was hard and it sucks, but there's also places like you can become a fire inspector. Once you become an officer, you're not in the back of the truck and doing work as much. So you can prolong your career. But Jimmy said he'll do an episode with you if you like. So this, maybe he'll talk about this, but I'm trying to convince him to just be like a stay-at-home dad. if we finally have a baby and stuff. But he's a captain right
Why
now.
Why do you want him to be a stay-at-home? First of all, 2 questions. 1, why does either one of you need to be a stay-at-home anything? 2, why would you want him to take on that position?
He's okay with it.
Okay.
And
But that's different from what he wants?
yeah, I think he would be completely fine with it. Like,
Okay.
I think there's a few goals he wants to complete before then, for sure. But if it came down to somebody having to be home, I think he would definitely do it. And I also make more money.
So it's a
And-
logical thing.
Yeah,
It's like, this is
like
what
it
makes sense.
Yeah. So, but
Do you think that's the future, by the way?
but
All the trajectories of economics are leading towards women becoming more and more of the breadwinners, because if you're looking at the college tuition rates, college graduation rates, and participation in the labor force, women are overwhelmingly starting to exceed men. Now, the reaction to that could be men start to take blue collar work more en masse,
Yeah.
which is needed: plumbing, electrician, carpentry, what have you, welding, any sort of trade with your hands. You will start to see a recession or a regression of higher education from the perspective of universities, and you're going to start to see like more apprenticeships, more blue collar work start to kind of take hold, because our generation was kind of the generation that was told by people that were making $40,000 a year that you needed to spend $200,000 a year to make $80,000 a year,
Yeah.
right? So Jimmy is, in a lot of ways, because you are in a relationship where you are, and by the way, it's not that Jimmy doesn't make money, you just make more money. So like this is like a calculation that's taking hold in like America throughout, right? You make more money, therefore it doesn't make sense for you to be a stay-at-home, but that is not in isolation. For the longest time, men were telling women, their partners, to stay at home because they made more money. It just made sense, regardless of the gender norms. Okay, I'm just talking about pure economics.
I mean, there's some people that are stuck on the gender norm, for sure.
Fair, but I guess for my argument, I'm trying to keep it strictly economic. Like, if you make $100,000 a year, and I make $60,000 a year, and we have a kid, it doesn't make sense for you to be work at home, because now we're at literally like a 0.6% earning potential.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. So no thank you, right? Versus if I were to stay home, now we're at 1.4%. So, or 1.4x, forgive me. This is not going to be something that goes away. In fact, I would make the argument that because women have been so intertwined, their success was so intertwined with their partner, that we're finally hitting the generations of women that can be successful without, that this will be something that happens in real time in our lifetimes. We will be in our youth, we will have seen the, men take care of the home, the hearth, the whatever, to women are progressing in terms of economics and responsibility and all that, to where you might start seeing some family households where the women are the main breadwinners and the men are the stay-at-home whatever, right? Do you think that is good? Do you think that is bad? What do you think about this changing in trajectory of humanity?
So,
For yourself in isolation, and then also extrapolate.
so we talked about the equality thing, right? I do think there is benefits in both. Like, I do think women bring stuff to the table in the home that men can't, and vice versa.
Agreed.
And not based on like assigned roles. Just like, I mean, how many times have you asked your wife where something is, and it was maybe right in front of you?
All the time.
Okay.
My wife is 98% of our house.
Okay.
98%.
So there's like an attention to detail there that like I think like I give Jimmy shit
my
because
wife made our home. If it was up to me, we'd have a TV, a rug,
right,
a couch.
we're the attention to detail.
Yes.
We're the structure.
You're
most
the
of time.
majority.
Right. So there, which also makes it where it's something we can bring into the workforce that I don't think men can. So
You're
that's
talking about the professional realm.
yes, professional realm versus home realm. So like
You don't
we're
think
good on-
men can bring that?
not the same that women can. But there's also things that you guys can bring that we can't.
Agreed. I actually agree with that.
Especially like in the fire service, obviously most men I work with are going to be physically stronger than me, right? But there's some structure, attention to detail, and other things that I can bring that they potentially overlook. So they're like, I do think there's an equality in the workforce of like needing both. But like, I don't think it should be like, oh, women should only be in the field and men should start staying home only. Like, and I also am like huge about, I had a friend not too long ago ask, like, marriage advice, what would you say makes you guys' marriage good? And I said, not having gender roles where like you have a sole responsibility at home. Like, people being like, well, the man's in charge of all the yard work, right? Because when the lawnmower breaks down, you feel like it's your sole responsibility, right? You got to get that lawnmower going. Or the car running, you feel like you got to have the car running. And it's on you solely to do that, right? Or the woman takes care of the bills. So if something's going wrong with that, she kind of feels like it's her fault. And like, so sharing those gender roles at home, I think are huge. And like interlacing that, not so much as like, breadwinner, you have these responsibilities and you have these responsibilities, more of like the team play. So I don't think it should shift more towards men or women working and one staying home, but like more of like what makes more sense and not having the egotistical part of it.
I agree with everything you said, but let me add a different paradigm to this conversation. It's easy for us to say this because we are both married. So this dichotomy of like how we tackle these situations seems so easy because we are already on a team. But how do you tell a hypergamous woman in her early 20s who has a biological clock to pick a man that she supersedes in earnings and will have to lead and all these other things, when in her nature she wants to pick someone that is like more successful, more established, more learned, and all these other things? I'm not saying that it. I really want to straight this to home. I don't think that there's a golden path. I think there are different strokes for different folks. I really do believe that, because what works for you might not work for me. What works for me might not work for you. But I'm just trying to like pinpoint this conversation to where I'm sure you've heard from younger people how awful dating is now. And you might say certain things that are like, well, me and my husband, we're a team, we're united in this. But then someone who's single, who's 18 years old might go, well, oh yeah, Kelly, well, how the fuck do I find that guy?
So what I tell that woman is to figure out who the fuck you are so you don't need that guy.
Very fucking fair.
And then you'll choose the right guy.
Very fucking fair.
Because if you know who you are and you're not relying on somebody to do something for you, then you choose a teammate instead of somebody you're fucking relying on. And that was like my big thing. Honestly, I had a good one because he stuck around. I was coming out of a relationship with me and Jimmy, started talking, and I tried to scare him off. The first night we went to a bar and hung out, I was like, I don't need a guy. I don't need a guy. If I want somebody in my life, it's because I want them there. Like, you're making me happy and I want you there. And like, had that whole talk. And I think there are some guys that want the woman that needs to rely on them. That
relies on them.
Yes. But you asked what advice would I give that 18, 20-something-year-old female is to figure out who the fuck you are so you don't have to rely on that person. And then you will find the right partner, because that's a partner then. That's not like somebody who's keeping you afloat or keeping your head above water. Like, you're doing that back and forth then because you're on the same playing field.
Let me do a follow-up then. Let's say they do follow your advice. They do develop into their early 20s, mid-20s, this sense of self, what is important to them, strengths, weaknesses, what have you. They're truly emotionally mature, physically mature, they're ready. How do you then tell someone like that, recede some ground, give ground? Because I think when we were coming up, so like me, I'm 6 years younger than you, but I knew Bruna, my wife.
I didn't think we were keeping count or anything.
Forgive me. Forgive me. You aged better. But I knew Bruna when I was 12 years old. We went to middle school together. So when I reached out to her, it was like, I wasn't like meeting somebody, right? Like, She kind of knew who I was. I kind of knew who she was. So in a lot of ways, we kind of cheated. Like, we kind of skip that whole bullshit process. But I think to myself, like, let's say you're 25. You've established yourself as a young woman. You're at some bar and like you're getting, bombarded with male attraction, male influence and attention. How do you deduce who's worth giving ground for? Because you've worked hard to create that ground. Am I incorrect in thinking that this is a monumental task? I feel like it is.
So I feel like if you actually do the work to get rid of the insecurities that you have as a young woman, right? Because there's a lot of weird things. Like, as girls, first off, as young women, I feel like we are taught we have to fight for attention. For some reason, I feel like...
Really?
Yeah. Adrian, look, yes. So
you fight for attention with men?
Yes, yeah. Like, almost, like, against...
Tell men that, because I feel like I gave that shit away for free.
Right. No, like, as a young woman, I feel like a lot of women learn to walk into a room and look at the other women around you and
competition.
Immediately compare yourself.
Okay.
Right? So, if you do the self-development of, like, figuring out who the fuck you are, what you want, where you want to go, you get where you're not doing that. And then the guys that are talking to you at a bar, you realize who's either trying to feed into that or who you start realizing more real people because you know who you are and you're not thriving for attention or wanting somebody to look at you or something like that. Instead, you're wanting a different connection. That's my opinion about it. Because, like, when you talk to somebody then, it's not like, oh, does he think I'm attractive? Does my hair look okay? Am I saying the right thing? You're like, this is who the fuck I am. And if he's reacting weird, he's obviously not on the same playing field.
Let me ask you one more question, and this might be the most controversial we have before we end the conversation.
Okay.
Do you think the promiscuity increase in women has actually empowered them, or is it a disservice to women? Meaning, in our lifetime, the amount of women that are increasing in terms of sexual partners before they're getting married has exponentially increased. Do you think, and I'm not trying to make this like I'm not trying to impart your morality. I'm not trying to import any sort of like religious connotation to this. I'm looking at this from like 1,000 feet high.
Yeah.
I have seen a growing number of women growingly or increasing in unhappiness, and it seems to be a correlation with the amount of promiscuity or sexual freedom that they have. That there was something to be said about being not necessarily celibate until marriage. I'm not going to go that far. I'm no saint myself. But what I am saying is there seems to be a correlation between the increase in individual freedoms and the decrease in individual happiness. I don't know if you've necessarily seen this as I have, but I could tell you right now, anecdotally, men and women are both telling me that the dating field is landmines, which tells me there's a disconnect, right? If men are telling me there's no good women and women are telling me there's no good men, there's got to be some wrong on both ends, right?
So,
and the only variable that's changed is the progression of women empowerment through all walks of life, professional, social, spiritual.
One of the main things that's changed is social media.
Extrapolate.
So take fighting, for example, right? Back in the day, if you were a good fighter, you just found out they were a good fighter because people watched their fights and they're like, fuck, they beat that guy's ass or they beat that woman's ass, right? Now there's different levels to it. Now, when you sign up for a fight, which, like, when I got into, like, LFA and stuff, I would actually get messages of, like, you need, or sign a contract that said that you need to post on these 3 social media platforms at least 2 to 3 times a week, right? Well,
there were mandates on the fight contracts.
Exactly.
Media contracts.
Exactly. So then that goes to another level of, like, there's people who get, let's be honest, there's people who get fight offers because of their following.
Paige Van Zandt.
Okay. So, and there's many names among that, right?
That's the first one I thought of.
Okay. So there's many names among that as well. And so there's a competition there with that. So if you realize that somebody's getting opportunity And even in the dating field, getting attention, which I just talked about, women with attention, right? Like you over social media posts, then that's like the key. And then I think that devalues them in a way. Like it devalues them even in themselves, not even realizing it. Like you're throwing shit out there that like afterwards you're probably questioning, or like you're devaluing yourself. You're not even realizing you're doing it. And honestly, if it weren't for my field in the fire service, I would have maybe got sucked into that, because I got so desperate for fights at one point of like, why are these girls getting fucking offers and I just beat that girl's ass or beat that girl's ass, and then you look up their social media and you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Did you feel a pressure to turn certain? They always say sex sells.
Yeah, I had managers that like, and even coaches tell me like, you got to put thirst traps out there. You got to put more shit out there.
Jesus Christ.
Like, you're a good looking girl, you know? And so there was absolute pressure, but then I was also working my way into a field that like, I couldn't devalue myself in that field because I was proving to be a valuable woman in a field that was male dominated in the fire service.
Hold up though, because I will say this. I think that it's human nature to want to be wanted for various reasons. Like, I want people to think I'm attractive. I want people to think I'm intelligent. I want people to think all these things. And as a woman, I there's like a fine line between like I'm feeling confident and I want to show that off and thirst trap. Would you agree?
Yes.
The problem though is the exacerbated nature of it. When I get on Instagram, when I get on X, when I get on anything, and by the way, if you look at all the things that I follow, it's like finance, politics, science, all these other things. But if you go to my explore, it's like boobs and butt. It's boobs and butt. Here's another. Hold up, though.
I think that's everybody's.
No. Can I add a different layer to that? My own personal Instagram, I have foregone. I don't use it anymore. So I only use the Instagram that we use for the podcast. And for that, I set it up as a business. So I am neither male nor female. So like, if you're trying to sell sex to an entity that is neither male or female, you would think, logically speaking, you would bombard it with both like six-pack abs and big tits, right?
But I mean, most of us females would rather look at tits than dicks.
Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm biased. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm getting on my Instagram, and everyone I follow either follows our page or is like, you know, some sort of political whatever, like some sort of prime minister, president, what have you. Yet, if I go to my Explore right now, it's literally like, check out my OnlyFans, do this, do that. I'm like, I don't, and I want to preface it this, I don't blame the women for taking advantage of market forces. If I was a 20-something hot young girl in America, you best believe I would be taking advantage of these
Every
things.
chick says that. And you know what? I'm telling you, like, I don't know if I would have took advantage of it. But think about, so when I came to St. Louis, I actually did some modeling.
Okay.
For Bacardi and Ford and some nightclubs downtown.
All right.
And it was because it paid really good to take some pictures, and it paid for medic school, right?
Okay.
Those pictures can probably still be found somewhere in the deep depths of the
But they're
internet.
not your titties out, spread eagle.
No, but like some of them were in lingerie and stuff.
Yeah, but that's
Here's
like a
the thing.
common post now.
Here's the thing. It was working a way into it, but you got to think. I found out that there was fire departments that Googled me and found that and was like, we're not hiring her. That's a problem.
Very fair.
So once I got into my fight career, there was no way I was going to take an opportunity of fucking up my fire career by doing that to get fights.
But Kelly, two factors in that. One, when you were coming up and doing that, lingerie photos were thought of as risque.
Yes.
Get on Instagram.
But the fire service is years
Dude,
behind.
micro bikinis are the norm now.
The fire service is years behind in that stuff.
Very fair.
And being an only female in a place and trying to gain trust when other girls have messed it up potentially in the past.
I only bring this up because I have a daughter. And, like, you know, other men have been like, oh, when she turns, you know, a certain age, she starts doing boyfriends. And it's hilarious to me because I'm like, you guys are clearly not seeing the forest from the trees. I am so hyper-focused on everything else before boys. But by the time she gets to 13, she is going to be bombarded with a plethora of bullshit far before
On the internet, yeah.
far before some guy's attention in her immediate vicinity.
Yeah.
It's different game now. You say that lingerie photos for Bacardi were like, oh. Now, if I showed you my Instagram feed, my algorithm, it's like butts in the air. If I get on X, you got full-blown porn.
Yes.
Which I think is... Listen, I'm all for free speech, but that's kind of crazy.
Most jobs accept that. Like I said, the fire
Full-blown
service
porn?
is a
Porn?
little bit more behind. And
By the way,
also,
is this a bad time to talk about my OnlyFans?
Do you have one?
No! Come on.
Oh.
No one wants to see this.
Jimmy was getting ready to sign up right now.
That makes sense. By the way, let me know. $5 is $5. You feel me? But I'm just saying.
But like the fire service is behind with that kind of stuff. And like I said, so you got to think too. I understand the fact of, all right, so just thinking about this. You are a firefighter and you're getting ready to work with a chick and you have to explain to your wife who it is and she starts looking it up and she has an OnlyFans. What is that going to make your home life like?
I've literally had conversations with OnlyFans models. My wife is supremely confident in herself. Okay. And she knows what kind of
not
man
all
she
wives
married.
feel okay with that.
Very fair, but then that's an individual problem, not a societal one.
But whenever,
when you were telling me that like you weren't getting invited to bullshit, that's them, not you.
But then it becomes my problem.
No, fuck that.
Because
no,
I can't adjust that.
No, fuck that. Fuck that. No, because that's how I think change doesn't happen. That's how I think change doesn't happen. You so say that's fucked up. Why didn't I get invited?
That's why I say you have to get to a certain place to be able to make those changes.
I agree with that.
So like I actually just got invited to be one of the lead instructors at the Missouri Women's Conference for all women firefighters. And it's cool because like I've gotten to be in a couple of female camps and I get to do what we call the real talk. And that's like I talk about some of my bad experiences at fire departments and like working your way in. And honestly, like coming into a field like that, you have to hold extra weight on your shoulders. And it's still not fair. Like, I think it's getting so much better. Our last couple of fire academy classes, we've had like 6 girls in there. I was the only girl in mine.
Is that a new
it's
high?
Huge. It's
6
huge
high?
highs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's.
How many? Just for reference, how many like men usually go out? How many women? So 6 women. How many men? So each
class is 30. About 32 kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roughly not
and
even
that's huge.
a fourth.
That's a huge.
Yeah, but that's not even a fourth.
But that's huge for for what it's been. Like, there's been a lot of classes there wasn't any women or 1 or maybe 2 if it was like, shit, we got an extra girl. So it's making some differences. So like being able to be part of that and like give them that talk, like we do hold an extra weight on our shoulders coming into this, where like you doing OnlyFans looks bad for the rest of us at the same time. You know, like when you become a female firefighter, you're not an individual anymore. You're representing all the women above you and behind you. So you're holding a road that was potentially paved and you're trying to pave a road behind you. And you do have to give up stuff that like doesn't feel fair in other professions.
Do the men have this pressure?
No, they don't.
Then I don't think women do either. I think it's a pressure you put on yourselves.
They do.
Why is it that a man can do whatever they want to do and a woman can't? And then when you ask women about this, they feel like they have some sort of reverence for those that came before them and they have to pave the way for those that came behind them. I genuinely say this with sincerity. If you want to eliminate these boundaries between genders, stop acting different.
So it's not acting different.
Okay.
It's more of building a platform that you can make those changes. And sometimes you have to tippy-toe to get there a little bit.
But don't you think changes are made, like, through action?
Yeah, but
you create the change.
So if you come into a workforce as a laborer, and your first day you're bitching about how much better things can be done, right?
Well, I'm not saying day one.
No, but in a career like this, it's years before you can get to a platform, before you're past laborer position. Especially as somebody coming in at, like, especially a female, honestly, because we're so far behind, just like fighting. Women haven't been in the fire service for that long. I think 1973 or something like that was the first fucking female. So we're still building a platform that is not established yet. The last probably 5 years has been some of the best. Like, there's been some female chiefs and stuff. I don't have any comment for the stuff with LA, but like there's been some really good platforms lately that like there's a women's conference every year. Like those are new things. And like so it's like coming into a labor job. Like the first day on the job, you're not going to be like, "Oh, this is fucked up. We could do this better." Right? You're going to wait till you get to a supervisor or a contractor.
Unless it's egregious. Unless it's egregious.
All right.
If I'm 20 years in, and I go to a new department and the shit that I'm seeing is egregious, then yes, day one. But I do agree with what you're saying of like, you need to at least build a repertoire.
Yes.
But I would also say 3 years in, 4 years in, fair. You're 20 years in now. If you
the career,
yes,
not of the department.
but that's what I'm trying to say. Like 20 years in my career,
yeah.
no one fucking bats an eye. If I say jump, they say how high, sir.
Fire service, you start all over.
Well, that's wrong. That's wrong.
It's wrong.
That's wrong.
I agree, but
that's
there's
wrong.
nothing I can do about it.
Well, then that's wrong.
But that's also why
but the first step is saying that's wrong. If we live in a meritocracy, if we live in a world where merit dictates the respect, regardless of all the other bullshit, merit, then that's wrong.
So that's why I'm an instructor at the fire academy, and that's why I'm involved in all the camps that happen too. But where I just started 3 years ago, there's nothing I can, like, I am a firefighter paramedic. I'm not a captain. I'm not a battalion chief. I'm not a chief.
Yet.
I mean, I got my goals.
Yet.
I got my goals. But like, that's the thing though, is like, especially, and we tell the women that, like, you do come in with extra weight on your shoulders, you're representing other females. Like, there's nothing you can do about that. If you come in and there's people who had a bad experience with one female, you have to prove it wrong. They're not going to just give you the benefit of the doubt. It's just not going to happen.
I think that you guys put too much emphasis on that, and fuck that. Why do you...
I wish we put too much emphasis on it.
Maybe this is me mansplaining. I never looked at another man's actions as an extrapolation of who I am. Or as like, you know, so-and-so did something, so now I have to do things 1.5x better because I have to like overcome the hurdle that he's created. I never thought of that shit. I was always in isolation. I think, if I may, you guys there's already added variables to the equation in terms of your professional development, but I do think that this one is one you add on yourselves. This paradigm of we have to do something because we represent this, that, or the other.
I have another firefighter sitting over there, and he'll agree that it's harder for women
I'm not saying
to
that
prove themselves after one fucked up.
No, I'm not saying... after one fucked up.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you come into a place, they had one female coworker that was not a good experience. You start over. Like, you don't just start over. You start a step back from the guy next to you.
That's different.
Like, so you're carrying that weight. If you come into... That's the weight I'm talking about, is you come into the job...
Not necessarily like a metaphysical, but a very real...
No, if you come into the job as a female and you're bad at your job, you are setting the next girl a step back.
How many men are bad at their job?
A lot. Doesn't matter. There's 20 men to every... More than that. There's like 100 and something men to every female firefighter.
Yeah, the same logic that dissolutes...
That gets overlooked, because when you come onto a scene, if you're the only girl, you kind of stand out. Like, it just happens, unfortunately. And it's not... And don't get me wrong, like, some of my biggest mentors, obviously all my biggest mentors in the fire service have been men. Like, unfortunately, there is like a competitive thing there with the females in the fire service even.
Well,
the guys...
You feel like there's scarcity.
Yes. And like, you know, you don't want... I don't know. It's like an alpha female thing or something. I don't know. It's really weird. But my mentors in the fire service have been men, and they were like phenomenal. Like, some of my best friends that I've met in the fire service, like, we get off the phone and say, I love you, because we know shit can happen at any point, and they're like...
That might be the last conversation you have.
Exactly. And they're like some of the best dudes in my life. So, like, don't get me wrong. Like, and when I started riding the scene at my last place, it was because the guys behind me were like, please just do this. You're going to be great at it. Just do it. But like, I took it upon myself to come in and know that there was potentially a girl that made them think that we weren't good at the job, and I was ready to do 110% of the job to prove I meant to be there. And then after that, like, you become part of the team, you know? Just knowing, though, like, you're coming in and potentially representing a girl that maybe didn't want to be there as bad as you. Or you're withholding a girl that worked her ass off to prove women deserve to be in the field. So you're, like, holding a standard that was already set. There is a different weight on your shoulders when you're coming into it. Not just, like, a coworker. Like, you're literally holding down a legacy or creating one, potentially, at any department you go to. So it's a completely different pressure than the guy next to you that's coming into the field.
Kelly, this is by far our longest episode. We're at 3.5 hours. I want to thank you for your transparency, your willingness to have a conversation with me. I feel like we went through a bunch of different topics, so thank you for the roller coaster. Before we end it, is there any last thing you want to say? And by the way, you're always welcome on again. I wanted to have a conversation about we didn't do any one topic justice because we didn't talk enough about the firefighting.
Yeah.
We didn't talk enough about the fighting in general. But I wanted to at least touch on some of these bases thoroughly enough to get a context of who you are. I do think we did that. So forgive me. It's just I don't think 3.5 hours is enough to tell your story. What a story to tell.
Thanks.
Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up today?
No. I'd be up for a second session for sure.
Fuck yeah.
Have a good time.
Well, thank you, Kelly,
All
so
right.
much. I appreciate it. It's a good handshake.